Picture this. You spend 9 years mastering a game, only to wake up inside it, not as some chosen hero, but a hulking barbarian who immediately has to smash a goblin into oblivion. A tattooed tribal chief, still with a gamer's brain, just grins at a terrified fairy, clearly planning something devious. His power a wild blend of raw barbarian strength and ancient tribal seals, all thanks to a mind that's seen this pixelated you-died screen countless times. But in this world, death is a very permanent, very painful end, just like our protagonist is finding out. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain knows exactly how to make his enemies scream, sometimes by literally melting their faces with his own blood. He's become a legend to his tribe, literally hoisted onto their shoulders as their champion and a living weapon, unleashing raw, explosive power that rips through reality itself, which makes you wonder why our transmigrated grinder is still shouting in a full-blown panic. To understand how he got here, we have to go back to the very beginning. Our story opens in a hospital room, where Hansu Lee is absolutely bored out of his mind, failing repeatedly at some mobile game, and absolutely furious with the AI for its terrible healing choices. He tosses the console aside in disgust, wondering if there's even one original game left out there, before stumbling upon something called Dungeon and Stone. It's only in English and doesn't look like his type of game, but hey, it's free. After picking a random class, since he doesn't plan on playing much anyway, our future grinder quickly realizes hours have flown by, and this game is ridiculously fun. He gets so into it that a nurse has to scold him for shouting about priests, but he quickly apologizes and dives right back into his strategy. This game, with no tutorial in any language, becomes his obsession for nearly a decade, sticking with him from his hospital bed, through military service, university, interviews, and even his daily commute to work, constantly dying, but always getting back up for another try. Finally, after all that grinding, he reaches the ominous gate of the abyss. He cheers triumphantly, exclaiming that he sacrificed his entire 20s for this moment. The game asks if he wants to enter the boss room, warning him he might never come back, and our gamer barbarian smiles, ready for anything. He selects yes, and the loading screen appears, thinking he'll just gather information on this first attempt, since he doesn't expect to win right away. But then a shocking, "You've reached the abyss" message pops up, followed by a tutorial in, get this, Korean, a language he thought the game didn't even support. Clutches his head, furious that he spent a decade wrestling with English, before a blinding light engulfs him like a camera flash going off inches from his face. Screaming, "What the F?" he comes to amidst a group of towering barbarians, an elder congratulating them on becoming proper warriors in a torchlit cavernous space. A weapon is offered, but our thinking barbarian can't understand a word of the strange language, yet somehow he still understands it, wondering where he even is. He inspects his own heavily muscled, tattooed arm, feeling the rough hands and tough muscles, and is shocked to realize this powerful physique is his new body. He stares at his own face, terrified. Then Karak, Vanon's third son, approaches, handing our newly muscled hero a double-headed axe and commending his great choice. As Ainar steps forth, our hero is drenched in sweat, watching others pick their weapons. He stares at the glowing city of Rafdonia, and a chilling realization dawns on him. This is Dungeon and Stone. He recalls the game's start screen, realizing this is exactly how it began when he chose the barbarian class. He's clearly terrified, stuttering in panic that he is truly here. An observant barbarian notes he's different, and our hero hears a voice in his head, before noticing the stern, elderly barbarian nearby. He wonders when this elder got so close, shouting in panic. The elder confronts him directly, pointing a finger and stating, "It was you." Our hero sweats profusely, realizing the danger as the elder swings an axe, and he flinches back like a boxer bobbing under a haymaker he never saw coming. He screams, "What the hell?" But the elder calmly tells him to settle down. Our thinking barbarian instantly realizes that any more emotion will mean his death. The elder stares intensely, accusing him of being an evil spirit. As an older barbarian reaches out to grab his hair, he understands. People like him who transmigrate into the game are evil spirits, and he will die if anyone finds out. Though his new goal is clear: survive this ceremony without being exposed. Standing in line with other barbarians, he desperately needs to know his name, begging for a stat window or anything to tell him, because his life depends on it. He resolves to wait exactly 2 seconds after a name is called, counting down, knowing that if no one steps up, then that name must be his. Standing before the elder, our thinking barbarian holds his breath as a name is called. Then an unknown voice shouts for him to pick his weapon. He grins, finally hearing the name he's waited for. "Bingo!" he shouts, "That's my name." And now it's time to make his second crucial decision. Reflecting on how barbarians, despite lacking magic, have immense physical strength, he remembers his past life as Hansu Lee, when he initially built his barbarian as a close combat dealer. But this time our gamer barbarian reaches for a different item entirely, a shield. He confidently declares it the best choice. As the game system confirms, Jandal's son, Bjorn, has become a warrior, and synchronization is complete. His stats flash across his vision, showing his new level, physical and mental attributes, and a significant boost to his item level. He remembers back in the game, he'd often choose cool-looking greatswords, but always ended up dying far too much. wondering how to build a more survivable character. He experimented with dual axes, hammers, and flails, finding most builds stuck to the berserker meta, but none were stable. He was constantly just barely scraping by. Then one day, an epiphany hit him. Does a barbarian really have to be a damage dealer? With their high vitality and strength, they have the perfect base to be a tank. And though it required extensive training, he decided to make the switch. His new strategy proved instantly successful, blocking a powerful cockatrice attack and leading to a clear, cementing his belief in this overpowered build. Back in the present, Bjorn shouts for the massive city gates to open, and the stone portals of Rafdonia begin to rise, revealing their destiny. Warriors who pass the ceremony must enter the labyrinth, the city with a labyrinth. Rafdonia itself, an older leader passionately shouts that their fate lies within, and the barbarian horde charges forward, our newly muscled hero among them, deciding to run along for now, but wondering if any of them actually know where they're going. Soon enough, the mob is shouting at their leader to step down, who quickly admits he's unqualified and resigns. Then Ainar Feneline's second daughter, confidently steps up, ready to lead them all. Our thinking barbarian, annoyed by the brainless squabbling, knows they'll never reach the labyrinth at this rate, but he still wants to avoid drawing attention. As Ainar debates with others, he subtly puts a finger to his lips, giving her a silent cue. Ainar, wide-eyed, instantly gets the message. She quickly announces her leadership, uniting the cheering barbarians, and they follow her toward the labyrinth, a bright purple magical portal, which our hero recognizes as the sacred dimension of battle. But despite the excitement, he's sweating nervously, deeply questioning if entering the labyrinth is the right decision, since he's just a normal person with no real fighting experience, and his life is now truly at stake. He recalls the wicked tax system of Dungeon and Stone, where citizens over 20 must pay taxes or be executed, and going into the labyrinth is the primary way to earn money. Other jobs, like working in village bars, are not an option for him, because he is a barbarian. Barbarians are too savage for normal work in this world, which is why they receive a weapon at the start of the game. The biggest problem is that the labyrinth only opens once a month, meaning if he misses this chance, he needs to survive a whole month in a village where he can't get a job. If he's going in, it has to be now, because surviving a month without resources would leave him in the worst possible state. This isn't just a game anymore. His life is truly on the line. Suddenly, Ainar appears and puts a hand on his shoulder, reminding him that the labyrinth portal is closing in 5 minutes, and they both observe it shrinking rapidly. Ainar then thanks Bjorn, son of Jandal, for his help just now, which our hero deflects, saying there's no need. She tells him she's never seen a barbarian as clever as him, making our thinking barbarian reflect on his situation. In the game, barbarians knew no fear, and it seems no different in this real life. Ainar asks if that isn't natural, and explains that barbarians learn to overcome their fear because they know they'll die otherwise. She waves goodbye, wishing him survival and another meeting. Our shield-wielding strategist grips his shield, admitting he's scared, but the labyrinth is closing soon. He also possesses invaluable knowledge from raising thousands of characters in the game. He jumps headfirst into the swirling magical rift, resolved to survive. He falls through the darkness, dropping like a stone, until a status box announces he's entered the level 1 crystal cave. He blinks, looking around in confusion, wondering where he even is now. Our gamer barbarian, Bjorn Jandal, recalls his expert knowledge of Dungeon and Stone, confirming his long-held theory about combining a sturdy barbarian body with a deep understanding of the game's systems. But now he's plunged into the labyrinth, cursing as he realizes he can't see a single thing, despite his game knowledge telling him level 1 should be illuminated by wall crystals. A chilling thought strikes him. Could he have spawned in the Darkness region, an ultra-rare, lightless area on the labyrinth's outskirts? He knows this isn't usually a starting point, but acknowledges that this is reality, so nothing is guaranteed, and his game interface, status, inventory, skills refuses to appear. He curses, realizing nothing works as expected, but there's no point staying put, so he decides to pick a direction and start moving. Our new resident labyrinth expert crawls slowly through the pitch-black tunnel, wondering if this pace is fast enough, when suddenly he stops, startled by a sound or a feeling, and then a searing pain as he steps right into a goblin trap. Bjorn clenches his jaw, fighting to suppress a scream, knowing he needs to calm down and not make a sound, because goblins are known for using traps on level 1, and the one who set this is definitely nearby. He scans the darkness intently, wondering if by some chance it's not in the vicinity, but he knows a trap means a goblin, and a scream would just draw it closer to his helpless, injured self. Our tattooed warrior raises his shield, sweat beading on his brow, deciding it's time to do what's necessary. He examines the iron jaws clamped on his bloody foot, realizing it's laced with paralyzing poison, and curses the barbarians for giving him useless sandals instead of proper leather boots, before snapping at himself to stop whining. If he has to fight, he needs to do it quickly, so he limps forward, calling out for it to show itself, even as the poison spreads, making his right foot numb, but paradoxically also killing his fear. He considers that a good thing, but then curses the absolute silence. "I said, come out, you son of a bitch!" Bjorn roars into the void, trying to provoke the creature, then wonders if he's just deluding himself, if there really isn't a goblin here at all, but then decides if it's going to hide. He's leaving, vowing to survive no matter how idiotic he seems. Suddenly, a large shadow looms in the darkness, and Bjorn's eye widens as he hears footsteps, confirming it moved, asking if it can't handle a little insult to its family. The footsteps came from behind, meaning it's only closing in as he gets further away, so our resourceful chief decides to increase his speed. He trips and falls in the darkness, like a puppet whose strings are suddenly cut, realizing the goblin is following at a distance, stopping when he stops and laughing, enjoying its prey slowly bleeding out, waiting for him to die in terror. Bjorn mutters about the goblin's cunning as it no longer hides its voice. He decides it's time to change plans. With a grunt of pain, he collapses face down on the ground, wounded and exhausted, calling out to the goblin, telling it its prey has fallen as it wished, and daring it to come closer. The goblin stares down with a curious, malicious expression. KRRR. Bjorn reacts in shock as a rock strikes him. He realizes the goblin is checking if he's dead, marveling at its intelligence and calling it smarter than barbarians. He realizes the goblin is coming closer as it advances. Then, with glowing eyes, our barbarian brainiac grabs it. "Welcome, you bastard!" Bjorn snarls, springing up to attack with newfound intensity, like a coiled spring suddenly released. Striking at the retreating goblin, but then he stares with a sudden realization. MMY reach was too short. What? His body, however, moves by itself, allowing him to vividly sense the goblin's movements. And he roars, feeling immensely stronger, this body completely different from the sick one he spent his life in the hospital. "You're the prey here, fucking goblin," he declares, asserting his dominance. Bjorn relentlessly pummels the fallen goblin, fueled by adrenaline and this raw, newfound power, delivering strike after intense strike, standing triumphant over his victory with arms raised, his chest tattoos on full display. Final heavy strike lands, causing a burst of impact, and Bjorn kneels, watching in surprise as the goblin's body disintegrates, just like in the game, leaving behind a glowing item. He holds up a small, glowing grade 9 magic crystal, the currency of dungeon and stone, worth just a single piece of bread for all that hell. Our resourceful chief thinks with a smirk. He stumbles against a dungeon wall, realizing this place is indeed a world where labyrinths and monsters exist, where dead monsters disappear and leave items behind. Outside, familiar game scenery unfolds, with other races living together in the city, confirming this is the game world he knows. But Bjorn vows he will never confuse his reality by thinking it's a game. With that resolve, he walks deeper into the dark tunnel, leaving a bloody trail. Bjorn, our bleeding barbarian, is still struggling through the labyrinth, his wounds constantly weeping, crawling across the floor in agony, gasping for air, cursing the pain, but admitting that abandoning his human dignity in favor of crawling was a sweet victory for survival. He curses inwardly, spotting yet another trap, as the bleeding from his foot refuses to stop. This is dangerous, he realizes, desperately needing to find someone to help him, his hand dragging across the rough ground. He pushes on, his sweating face grim, certain that if he keeps moving in one direction, he'll eventually escape the darkness, and wonders what happened to the other guy who occupied this body before him, thinking how much he understands why humans need religions. Our hallucinating hero continues his slow crawl through the dark tunnel, then gasps as he sees light ahead, a beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness. He knows the entire first floor can't be dark, so he needs to reach that lighter area. But then a mocking version of himself appears, taunting him about why anyone would help a dying barbarian like him. The hallucination continues to sneer, calling him a barbaric idiot and making him wonder if he's truly going insane. Bjorn's eyes betray his internal distress as the hallucination persists, questioning his intelligence and how he plans to survive. But Bjorn, our tenacious tribal chief, shuts it down, vowing he will survive no matter what. He looks ahead, heavily injured and exhausted, gasping for breath, when suddenly a group of explorers discovers his dying form in a glowing section of the labyrinth. An explorer points, shouting to his companion Drouse that there's a dying barbarian there, with less than 4% vitality remaining. "FCK, if you know I'm a novice, help me, you a shoal." Bjorn begs in desperation, though he can barely speak. The explorers gather, suspicious. How did a novice get here faster than them? Bjorn struggles on the ground, unable to form words, his eye filled with raw, aggressive frustration. Drouse, an explorer, looks down with a stern expression, then a smirk at the dying Bjorn. Another explorer kneels, asking if Priestess Ursina can treat the man, and Bjorn feels a surge of hope, knowing a priestess is present. "I refuse," Ursina states coldly, crushing his hopes, though Bjorn realizes if they have a priestess, they must be high level. The explorer just smirks, then asks Patron for one of his potions instead. A gloved hand holds a vial, and the explorer warns Bjorn it's going to hurt a bit. Our recovering warrior just urges him to hurry up. A glowing red potion pours onto Bjorn's injured, tattooed limb, and he gasps in shock as a system message appears, showing his vitality rapidly increasing like a rushing river, demanding, What the hell is this? Bjorn screams in agony as his body reacts violently to the potion's recovery effect, and an empty vial lies on the floor as the agonizing process continues. He breathes heavily, kneeling on the ground, slowly recovering his strength, exhausted but alive, his eye revealing a storm of internal thought. Then a fully armored knight looms over him, interrogating him about how a novice like him managed to get here before them, towering over Bjorn's kneeling back. Bjorn looks up, contemplating the knight's objective, realizing they want to purchase that information. Our shrewd survivor thinks it's probably for the best, as there's nothing more suspicious than goodwill without reason. The blonde knight is deep in thought, having read about dimensional instability, while Bjorn looks on, suspicious and cautious. He notices they have a mage and a priestess, meaning they are at least mid to high-level explorers, as he kneels, battered and bloody, surrounded by the party members. The blonde knight looks on with a smug expression, and Bjorn, his face still bloodied, thinks that time in the labyrinth is as precious as gold. The explorer party walks away, leaving him behind, and he realizes it's a miracle they spent this much time on him at all. He stands alone in the dark labyrinth, looking down at his shield, telling himself he should be happy he survived, but it felt disgusting to be pitied. As the explorer party walks through the labyrinth under a glowing light, the blonde knight and a companion discuss Bjorn, remarking how he couldn't have been simply lucky if he stepped on a goblin trap on the first floor. Bjorn, looking at someone behind him, smirks. Want to use your potion because you were too cheap. The priestess stares coldly, and the female explorer gestures toward her, saying that if it weren't for temple regulations, she would have healed him. Man speaks closely to Bjorn, who smiles broadly, finding the praise amusing. Bjorn and his party navigate a blood-stained section of the labyrinth, as someone asks if they should stop, noting they've been going for a while. Another man talks to an archer companion, doubting Bjorn was lucky, suggesting their journey ends somewhere nearby. Going to take the shortcut, we need to turn here, Bjorn says, pointing ahead, making his companion praise having a guide. The explorers discuss how most guides only know the rough direction, impressed. A blonde explorer looks on attentively, and two explorers stand in a dark chamber, observing an ancient doorway, believing they're the first ones here because they hurried. A gloved hand touches a stone surface, and a burst of magical energy emanates from an ancient pedestal, activating a glowing, magical gate. The young blonde explorer smiles confidently, declaring they seem to be in luck. An explorer walks forward cautiously through a shadowy corridor, then shouts for them to wait. The group of explorers stops, surprised by the glowing light, discovering a bloodied trap and a familiar sandal on the ground. A wizard casts a glowing magical light spell, seeming to agree. The magical light illuminates the dark wall of the labyrinth, revealing a narrow tunnel path, and the party members look on with expressions of shock and realization. Female explorer with a bow looks into the darkness in surprise. The wizard and a knight exchange information, realizing the barbarian they met took a shortcut that shouldn't exist. The wizard's face shows concern, as a female explorer comments that the barbarian must be out of his mind, looking to Patron for confirmation. A man's face looks intense and sweaty, as an armored character looks down at the hand of a fallen, tattooed barbarian holding a red crystal, realizing he was holding out his right hand toward them, showing them the magic crystal. The armored character holds the glowing red crystal, concluding that even after crawling all that time, he hadn't forgotten his trade item. A man with a smirk explains that Bjorn wouldn't have had anything else to trade. He continues, describing such driven people as those who will not die unless under special circumstances. No matter how hard things are or how much agony they face, they will never treat death as an escape route. Our transmigrated grinder is still smashing through goblins, complaining all the while about how many he keeps running into. He even steps on a trap, yelling about how poorly they're hidden. Another goblin attacks, but our barbarian with a gamer's brain just smashes it with his shield, his face grim from the relentless fighting. He checks his small pouch of food, only to realize he's running critically low. He eats the last of his rations, reflecting on how this crusty, dehydrated bread somehow tastes delicious when he melts it with saliva, which only makes him more thirsty. Sitting alone in the dungeon, he wonders where he'll get water, knowing this already hardcore game has become an out-of-this-world difficulty now that it's reality, not just a game he knew. Moving quickly through the dark labyrinth, his tattooed arm stretches out towards a welcome sound, and he finds a mysterious individual kneeling near a water source. It's another person, his first encounter outside of hostile parties, but there's no conversation between them. Our tired tribal chief counts his bloodied hand full of 44 magic stones he's collected from hunting, feeling overwhelmed by his own fatigue from all the goblin hunting, and he yawns loudly, realizing he needs an ally to sleep safely in the labyrinth. Two explorers are startled by his sudden approach, frantically denying his request, making it clear their party is full and they're not keen on barbarians. Bjorn expresses his frustration at being rejected by all of them, only wanting a temporary ally for the night, when a voice cuts him off. A man named Hans stands smiling, holding out his hand to Bjorn and asks if he's looking for an overnight companion, leaving Bjorn confused and suspicious. Hans explains his terminology, which is how it was noted in the game as a night companion, much to Bjorn's relief. Bjorn internally considers the term night companion to be slightly perverted in person. Still, he extends his bloody hand, introducing himself as Bjorn, son of Yandel, and Hans just says he'll call him Bjorn. Our cheerful companion shakes Bjorn's hand, suggesting the two of them just spend the night together, which just leaves Bjorn visibly shocked and even more suspicious of his strange manner of speaking. Bjorn reluctantly agrees, despite his growing confusion, and they decide who sleeps first with rock, paper, scissors. Hans confidently declares his win, and our surprisingly kind stranger sleeps peacefully on the ground as Bjorn watches him, wondering if this is what an experienced adventurer is like. Bjorn stares at the sleeping Hans, questioning if he could borrow the sleeping bag, then wishing time would hurry up. After a while, Bjorn monitors the time on his watch and wakes Hans up, who asks if anything happened, and Bjorn confirms nothing. Hans thanks him, telling Bjorn to get some sleep, promising to wake him in 2 hours. Bjorn agrees, but internally knows there's no way he can rest, unable to trust someone he just met. He decides to pretend to snore loudly, like a savage who's had a long day, to trick Hans into believing he's asleep. Hans watches Bjorn, confident his plan is working perfectly, thinking barbarians are funny simpletons. Bjorn remains alert, waiting for Hans to make his move if he has ulterior motives. But after 2 hours, Hans does absolutely nothing, and Bjorn realizes he didn't sleep a wink. He regrets wasting his time and effort on his failed plan, but there's no way he could let his guard down so easily around a complete stranger. He feels like he's going to die from fatigue, but despite his efforts, he suddenly snaps awake after drifting off. Our weary barbarian looks distressed, realizing he accidentally fell asleep, and Hans points out the drool on his face as Bjorn awkwardly wipes it away. Hans reacts in surprise by saying nothing happened and offering to let him keep sleeping, even saying he looks tired and it's his turn to stand guard. Bjorn reflects on Hans's seemingly kind and polite behavior, how he spoke first, didn't blame him for falling asleep, and refused compensation for the mistake. Lying back down, Bjorn thinks about the game world he knew, realizing no one there was this nice, when Hans suddenly asks if he's up. Our blood-soaked tactician is bleeding, slamming his hand onto the floor, attacking an unseen opponent, his eyes glowing with intense fury. He intimidates an opponent who pleads for a moment, making excuses, but Bjorn strikes him again, making him cough up blood, asking if he thinks barbarians are stupid. Bjorn looms over the fallen opponent, who desperately tries to explain as our warrior smashes him again. The opponent is sent flying from the blow, and Bjorn walks towards him, bloodied and determined. The opponent pleads for mercy, and Bjorn asks him flat out why he did it. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain stares, with a determined and bloodied face. The opponent confesses he wanted Bjorn's magic crystals, planning to knock him out and take them. Bjorn confronts him, asking if he'd kill a barbarian just for a few crystals, and the opponent admits he wanted Bjorn's high-quality barbarian shield too, which sells for a good price. Bjorn kicks his opponent for lying, telling him this is the last time to be honest. Standing over his defeated foe, Bjorn knows killing another adventurer is a serious crime in Dungeon and Stone, and there has to be another reason. He threatens the struggling opponent, demanding to know about his heart. Trembling, the opponent explains that barbarian hearts are being sold at a steep price as ingredients for a new spell. Mystical red heart symbol pulses within a magical circle, and Bjorn finally understands. Barbarian hearts are tough to catch, but precious enough to yield a big reward, which makes Bjorn wonder why this guy didn't try this when he fell asleep the first time. The defeated opponent pleads for mercy, justifying his actions by saying he needed to sleep too. Bjorn walks forward with a cold expression, mocking the idea of forgiveness, knowing he'll probably run into more people like this who will say the same thing. The terrified opponent stares up, realizing his fate is sealed, as Bjorn looms over him with glowing red eyes, asking if he really thinks he'll forgive them every time. The opponent panics, frantically trying to convince Bjorn he's different. He offers everything he has, begging for one more chance, but Bjorn delivers a final, crushing blow. Only one day after entering this game world, he killed a man, accomplishing his first murder and gaining a mental stat increase. 2 days into the game, our weary barbarian is now fully geared up, having equipped shoulder pads, a backpack, a hammer, and leather boots, finally graduating from living like a savage. He stands holding his weapon, covered in blood, reflecting on the irony that only when he killed a man was he able to start living like one. He strikes a goblin with his heavy hammer, and with one hit, the goblin disappears, making him wonder if he should have selected weapons from the beginning. He stands facing 2 approaching goblins, musing that during battle, it feels like he's in somebody else's body, perhaps because he's in the body of a barbarian. He grips his hammer tightly, ready for combat, as goblins now appear in pairs, but his battle stats have gone up with his new weapon. 2 goblins charge forward, and Bjorn swings his hammer, crushing one easily, and his progress feels smooth. But he kneels on the ground in a dimly lit cavern, exhausted, realizing he's going to die from fatigue, having battled goblins nonstop since encountering hands, and he desperately needs to sleep. He leans against a wall, crossing his arms, thinking he might be better off without an overnight companion, since there's a higher chance of survival if he gets stabbed by goblins rather than a human. He stares down at two approaching goblins, gritting his teeth in frustration that these bastards decide to show up as soon as he starts to doze off. He screams in anger, raising his hammer at them, and his hammer strikes the ground, causing an explosion. Bjorn stands alone in the dark, having killed all of them, begging for them to stop appearing so he can sleep just a little. But a goblin attacks him in his sleep, and he didn't sense it at all, eyes widening in shock as he's stabbed. Bjorn smashes the goblin into the ground with his hammer, roaring in rage, as another goblin reacts in shock nearby. Breathing heavily, Bjorn looks down at the goblin, preparing his next attack, as another goblin flees in terror, and Bjorn just tells it to leave, having no energy to chase. He examines the stab wound on his chest, realizing how close he was to death and that he truly needs proper rest. He winces in pain, applying a potion to his chest wound, finding it hurts more than the stab itself. 14 hours after departing from hands, Bjorn walks through the cavern exhausted. He thinks it's time people started looking for overnight companions, but he can't trust anyone now that he knows how valuable barbarian hearts are, deciding he can only trust another barbarian. Two humans approach him, offering to let him join their group, but Bjorn declines, stating he's only looking for another barbarian, noting how humans seem to want him now unlike yesterday when he was covered in blood. He converses with them, reflecting on his disheveled appearance after the fight, before the humans tell him finding another barbarian will be tough. Bjorn explains the scarcity of barbarians on the first floor, as most would have ascended, then realizes how laughable it must seem for someone of his large build to struggle on this floor. He parts ways with the human and considers searching for other species, realizing he has to be realistic about finding a companion. Walking through the cavern, he ponders which species to choose, thinking elves who keep their promises or dwarves who are spirited like barbarians would be best. He decides any other species will do, since most have special traits, unlike humans, and wouldn't harm other adventurers for chump change. After roaming the cave for about an hour, he encounters an injured elf sitting alone. Bjorn stares at the injured elf, announcing he's found them. Stumbling through the dark labyrinth, his steps uncertain like a toddler's, our heavy-hitting hero finds an injured fairy, who immediately looks up in alarm. Bjorn, the barbarian with a gamer's brain, stands over her and asks if she's alone, noticing how on guard she is, and figures anyone would be intimidated by a large barbarian when injured. He observes the wound on her stomach, thinking a goblin dagger couldn't have done that, and wonders if she was hurt by a human. Our protagonist waits patiently, but the silver-haired fairy suddenly kneels, begging him for help and calling him Mr. Barbarian, pleading tearfully to be let go just once because she has a little brother to take care of. Bjorn is absolutely flummoxed, thinking about what kind of elf has no backbone, as most elves in the game were cold and unyielding, so he decides to try and look friendly by giving her a smile. He grins and reassures her he has no intention of killing her, but our scared elf immediately shouts, "Liar," and keeps pleading for her life, making Bjorn wonder what barbarians supposedly do to get such a bad reputation. Confused by her extreme intimidation, he ignores the barb stereotype and offers her some licho leaves for her wound, which she recognizes as precious medical supplies. She asks why he's helping, to which our pragmatic protagonist replies, "Must there be a reason to help someone?" while internally adding that he wants her to be his overnight companion. He sees she's injured, fatigued, and beautiful, making her situation much worse than his. Bjorn observes that she's already used the medical supplies, proving she's pretty handy. And she seems less guarded now. He decides to introduce himself as Bjorn, son of Jandal. The fairy is surprised, introducing herself simply as Erwin. A barbarian with a gamer's brain asks her directly why she's still so afraid of him. Erwin explains it's because she's an elf, and he's a barbarian, revealing that elves and barbarians are actually hostile towards each other. Bjorn is shocked, remembering the game lore where their relations were good, and he learns there was a war 10 years ago that he was unaware of. But Erwin quickly assures him she holds no ill will and doesn't want to fight. A transmigrated grinder reassures her that he doesn't harbor ill will either, to her visible relief. Erwin then proposes they cooperate as overnight companions, since they are both incredibly tired. She asks him to swear upon his warrior's honor that he will not harm her. Bjorn, who doesn't give a damn about warrior's honor but knows it's useful, agrees to swear, and both Bjorn and Erwin make their oaths not to harm each other during the night. Our weary warrior decides he can finally get some proper sleep and offers to sleep first, assuming Erwin would prefer that. He lies down, planning to fake sleep for 10 minutes, but his exhaustion is too much, and he's woken 2 hours later by Erwin, realizing he wasn't even able to pretend. He realizes the synergy of the blanket and backpack must have been too powerful, so he offers them to Erwin for comfort. Erwin is surprised and delighted by his kindness, gratefully accepting them. Our silver-haired fairy covers herself, clearly touched by the gesture. Bjorn watches Erwin fall asleep instantly, like a light switch being flicked off, and realizes she was just as exhausted as him, probably having an equally tiring day. He reflects on how it feels like 5 days, but it's only been 3, and contemplates his real life, wondering if he's been reported missing. Deciding there's nothing for him back home anyway, he stops dwelling on it, fearing his willpower will break, and prepares for his next turn standing guard. With just 10 minutes left until his watch ends, Bjorn wonders if he should ask Erwin to become a permanent comrade, considering how much she could pull her weight in battle. He weighs the pros and cons of splitting rewards versus having safe sleep and help with the goblin swarms, which have been intense lately. Suddenly, mysterious figures appear. Noticing them and recognizing Erwin, a barbarian with a gamer's brain stands up and confronts the intruders, stating that he and Erwin are overnight companions. He aggressively dismisses their curiosity about how much time is left, saying he has no obligation to respond. Bjorn gives a smirk, then decides it's time to go. He worries, realizing he's got a bad feeling about this, and that the intruders were definitely looking for Erwin. He gently shakes our sleeping elf, who groggily asks for 5 more minutes. Our protagonist looks annoyed, frustrated that she wants to keep sleeping while about to get completely screwed. As the danger looms, our quick-thinking barbarian frantically tries to wake Erwin, asking why she's pretending to sleep. Our terrified elf looks panicked and tearful, confessing that she's afraid he'll desert her. Erwin cries, certain Bjorn will leave her to face the pursuers alone. Our cunning chief asks what happened between her and the 2 figures from the night before. Erwin initially denies anything, then admits they're from the Crystal Union, probably the same clan as the human who hurt her. She explains the symbol on their garments, identifies them as the Crystal Union, who do their main business on the 1st floor. Bjorn is taken aback, realizing she's only 20 years old. He tells her to talk while they move to save time, agreeing to hear her story before deciding anything. Erwin, ecstatic, quickly agrees to listen while moving since they're already behind schedule. She recounts meeting the union manager on her first day in the labyrinth. She woke up to him looming over her, telling her to go back to sleep, and later learned he was a clan manager. Erwin managed to escape, but the union members kept attacking her, which is how she got injured. She mentions they used message stones to pursue her, a device Bjorn never saw in his game. Our quick-thinking barbarian demands more details. As Erwin explains, these mystic devices allow communication up to 300 meters, like walkie-talkies. Bjorn quickly analyzes the situation. Nowhere to run, lots of manpower, and magic comms mean he can't possibly leave Erwin behind, and holds his shield defensively. He asks why they're still chasing her, guessing it's to shut her up, but Erwin looks down, hinting there's more to it. She admits she hit him somewhere bad. Bjorn tells her they're increasing speed, checking if she's good with that. She replies, yes, for now, and they kick into a sprint like a suddenly unleashed greyhound. He asks for the distance between them and the chasers, and Erwin reports it's still around 150 meters. A barbarian with a gamer's brain looks determined, straining as they continue to run. He focuses on the path ahead. His massive hammer ready, our silver-haired sprite looking worried calls out to him. He starts nervously listing her skills, good at laundry, cleaning, and archery, along with spirit magic to prove her worth as a comrade. Erwin poses with her bow, surrounded by flame magic, demonstrating her flame element spirit abilities. Bjorn looks thoughtful and serious, processing this new information. Erwin nervously explains that when she was escaping, she flung her knife around, and it happened to strike him in a very unfortunate place. She laughs nervously while elaborating that it was completely severed and couldn't even be reattached with potions. Bjorn is visibly horrified, shouting that's more than enough reason to chase her, and asks why she's laughing. Erwin apologizes, saying she just thought it was karma. Our big-hearted boss looks focused as Erwin warns him someone is following them, still about 150 meters behind. Bjorn then formally offers for her to become his comrade until they get out of the labyrinth, stating he'll take 90% of the rewards, with no complaints accepted, to which she immediately agrees. Erwin reports they're only 100 meters ahead, closing in even as they run at maximum speed, so Bjorn decides they need a different approach. He tells Erwin they're going to veer off and orders her to summon her spirit. Erwin quickly complies, summoning a flame spirit. As they run through the dark dungeon, Bjorn reflects on returning to this area. He notes the pursuers feel closer now, then orders Erwin to cancel the summon. Bjorn observes that the pursuer came in despite the darkness and stopped right by them, realizing this means they have proper tracking methods. He calls out to Erwin, ordering her to shoot. Erwin aims quickly and fires her arrow into the darkness. He stands shaken after the shot, but Bjorn praises her, saying her quick actions saved them from danger. He observes their fallen pursuer. Bjorn picks up a glowing communication device from the body, hearing panicked calls of Certain. Our cunning chief impersonates the fallen pursuer, yelling that Certain is out of contact and to gather at the Goblin District. He stares intensely as he delivers the message, sending the Crystal Union on a wild goose chase. Our gamer barbarian sits down to check the meager loot from the fallen explorer the Crystal Union called Certain. And while he inventories the paltry haul of crystals and daggers, Erwin appears in her new leather gear, telling him it feels a bit weird, but that it's much better than her old cloth. A broad-shouldered leader notes that her aura has changed for the better, along with her outfit. Now looking much more confident, Erwin asks how to use the message stone, guessing there must be a button on its side. Suddenly, a menacing broadcast blasts from it, declaring, SCRDIN, who was in pursuit of the ELF bitch, was defeated. The bitch is located in the Goblin District. She's with a barbarian who's got a hammer and shield. The voice continues. The bounty is 10,000 gold, making Erwin react in terror, trembling as she calls out to our pragmatic strategist. Bjorn, however, calms her, telling her not to worry and to summon her spirit because they're going to travel along the outskirts. Without missing a beat, our hammer-wielding hero drops another bombshell, announcing they're heading to the second floor, which makes Erwin gasp in shock and question if they're really going alone. Erwin reminds him that the first and second floors are completely different, but Bjorn asserts that they'll be all right if they stay near the entrance. He explains that he's well aware of the danger, but that since they're such a good match. We're a good match? Erwin blushes and stumbles over her words, as Bjorn details that a melee tanker and a long-range dealer has always been a solid combination. He explains that if he's going to form a party with Erwin, the first floor won't yield good margins, but she remains hesitant, comparing it to diving into an orc lair to avoid goblins. The message stone crackles again with even more vile threats, promising, if you find the elf bitch, we'll give you first dibs on enjoying her on top of the 10,000 gold. Bjorn, without a trace of hesitation, reassures a trembling Erwin not to worry, telling her he is not leaving her, even as the unseen speaker callously discusses cutting off her arms and legs. With the union members bantering about leaving the important bits, Erwin makes her decision, telling him, I'll go to the second floor. Our transmigrated brain thinks this was perfectly timed, as he no longer needs to convince her, musing that he always liked helping those in need, especially when it benefited him. If he could mess with such disgusting trash, then there was no reason not to help. As they walk through the dark labyrinth, Erwin asks our warrior with a gamer's brain if he even knows the way to the second floor. Bjorn admits he doesn't know the exact path, but he knows if they keep heading north, they'll eventually reach it. He explains that the dungeon is designed for the darkness to guide you to upper floor portals. Suddenly, Erwin cries out for him to wait, spotting a goblin trap on the floor, which Bjorn notes is pretty late for them to appear. Our pragmatic strategist reacts with frustration, wondering if goblins don't appear frequently in the light and how unlucky he must be, before declaring he'll handle it himself. He instructs Erwin not to use her spirit, to which she awkwardly agrees. Just then, goblins ambush them from the darkness, and Erwin, quick as lightning, strikes an attacking goblin with her bow. She expertly takes aim as another closes in, and Bjorn observes her impressive archery, admitting she must really be an elf. Erwin asks how she did, and Bjorn confirms she did well, complimenting her natural elf archery skill. A barbarian with a gamer's brain hands Erwin her 9 shares of the magic crystals, confirming they're 9, 1 split. She beams happily, eager to earn enough for her younger sibling, and while Bjorn gives her a skeptical look, Erwin promises to work hard. The message stone then crackles with an update. The bounty on the elf is now 20,000 gold, dead or alive. As he carries Erwin on his back through the dark labyrinth, Bjorn reflects that the union members seem disorganized, with many uninterested in the bounty, yet he finds it suspicious that things are going too well. He senses that his usual bad luck is due to strike soon, and just as he thinks it, Erwin cries out that ghouls are ambushing them, appearing in a section of the labyrinth where Bjorn knows they shouldn't be, according to the game's monster distribution. A broad-shouldered leader questions if they roam too far, or if he needs to fight them alone. He quickly decides they'll fight together, explaining the strange experience system of Dungeon and Stone, where you only get experience for defeating a monster species for the first time. This makes the unexpected ghoul encounter a great situation to level up, so he takes the lead, telling Erwin to handle the ones at the back. Bjorn notes that ghouls shouldn't attack until they're within a certain range, which thankfully proves true as they charge forward. Our hammer-wielding hero smashes into the charging ghoul like a boulder rolling downhill, stopping it in its tracks and easily dispatching it. He finds their pattern simple compared to goblins, especially with a trusty comrade by his side. However, Erwin calls out to him again, pointing to bloodstains on the labyrinth floor that she suspects aren't from goblins. She thinks the blood leads in their desired direction. A barbarian with a gamer's brain looks worried, wondering if it could be, but quickly dismisses the thought. A bloodstained sandal lies next to a bear trap, amplifying his frustration as he remembers his own arrival in this world. He's furious at his bad luck, wondering if he could have gone in the other direction. Erwin, seeing his distress, misunderstands completely, apologizing and asking if she did something wrong. She thinks he lost a precious comrade here, but Bjorn, surprised by her empathy, quickly assures her it's not her fault and that he didn't lose anyone. Our pragmatic strategist then asks if she's ready to go up, and Erwin, still a bit scared, admits that she doesn't think she'll die if she stays with him. Bjorn pauses for a moment before agreeing to move forward. So with Erwin echoing her resolve, they walk towards the glowing portal, ready to face the second floor. Our rough-landing hero and his fairy companion tumble headfirst through the portal, plummeting into the second floor, which the system announces is the Goblin Forest. Bjorn crashes hard onto the ground, causing Erwin to cry out, "Mister!" But he insists he's fine, even though he's clearly grimacing in pain. He can't help but notice that Erwin, true to her fairy agility, landed perfectly, something he's totally envious of. He wonders if they've arrived in the northern area of the Goblin Forest, and Erwin confirms her excellent night vision helps her see just as well. However, she's confused about the forest environment, as she'd never heard of the second floor being a forest. Our seasoned gamer Barbarian mentally pulls up the game map, revealing the second floor has 4 distinct areas: the northern Goblin Forest, the western Land of the Dead with its zombies, and the southern Dark Rocky Mountains, home to golems. But Erwin clarifies that all these paths eventually lead to the 3rd floor. Though with all routes heading down, she asks what their next move is. Our calculating chief thinks it over, realizing they can't just hang out by the portal all day. He explains there are time limits, 168 hours for the 1st floor and 240 for the 2nd, before deciding they need to start exploring. Erwin happily agrees as they head deeper into the forest. As they walk, she's delighted to be surrounded by trees again, giddily commenting that it feels nostalgic, like her own fairy shrine, though she asks if only monsters live here. Bjorn reminds her there are traps and tells her to stick to his footsteps, even pointing out another one hidden on the ground. He then uses his axe to disable it with a quick flick of his wrist. Erwin points out another trap she's found, and Bjorn, slightly surprised, asks if this is the rumored detection ability of fairies. He quietly admits to himself that she's suddenly looking a lot more dependable, but immediately catches himself, thinking there's no need to praise her. Erwin reacts to his bluntness with an offended HMPH. He watches her for a moment, thinking about how easy she is to control as a proper explorer. Bjorn explains that while there are traps on this floor, there are no goblins in the immediate area because, unlike the 1st floor, these traps are just terrain features. He then tells her to go ahead of him, which she readily does. Our Barbarian with a gamer's brain recalls that this place was always called the Goblin Forest in the game, and that goblins here move in groups of about a dozen, often with mutant warriors or archers further from the portal. They plan to stay close to the entrance, just in case they need to retreat immediately to the 1st floor. As they move, Erwin triggers a trap, but it's a false alarm. She spotted it in time. She asks Bjorn if she did well, and he actually replies with genuine praise. "You're so good. You're a proper explorer." But their moment is cut short as Erwin alerts him to a group of goblins. Bjorn asks how many, and she estimates there are definitely more than 10. He notes her incredible ability to move through the tall grass without making a single sound, something only a fairy could do. Erwin crouches by a tree to scout ahead, drawing her bow and taking aim at the distant goblins. Bjorn watches as she releases an arrow, but can't tell if she hit anything because they're too far away. They charge forward together, and Bjorn observes that this group is 3 times larger than what they'd usually encounter on the 1st floor. And there's even a goblin warrior in the mix, making it a genuinely intimidating sight. But our determined chief feels no fear at all, his warrior's heart twitching with anticipation. He lets out a primal shout, charging headfirst into the goblin swarm. He slams his shield into a goblin, then swings it wide to strike another 2 from both sides. Bjorn deflects a knife, narrowly avoiding having his head taken off. He grunts that they won't even give him a moment to catch his breath, acknowledging that even normal goblins are threatening when there are more than 5 of them. But he's not alone, as Erwin fires an arrow from a distance, supporting him, and Bjorn realizes she's repositioned herself perfectly. He glares at the remaining goblins, enraged, shouts, "You bastards," and roars, "Come ATME," ready to finish them all. Bjorn is checking out his loot, seeing a glowing pink magic crystal on the ground, and he's thrilled because he earned 11 magic crystals from just one goblin group, way more than he got on the 1st floor, even if he can't loot their gear. Our fairy companion Erwin just grins, clearly wanting more. So our Barbarian with a gamer's brain decides they need to keep moving. Once they venture beyond a 3-kilometer radius, they start running into goblin groups every 5 minutes, and these aren't just any goblins, but archers with glowing yellow eyes. One even zooms in with stealth magic, which Bjorn instantly recognizes. "Stealth magic, concentrate," he barks, getting ready with his shield as Erwin quickly replies, "Okay," while more goblins disappear into the forest. Our transmigrated grinder swings his heavy hammer down on a goblin, barely pausing as another goblin aims an arrow at him, but Bjorn's already lining up his next strike. He focuses intently, pushing through the chaos. Leaping towards a goblin archer lurking in the shadows, our tattooed tribal chief grips his hammer tightly, then smashes it down onto the archer. "Let's take a break," he finally says, and Erwin, looking utterly exhausted, breathes out, "Finally, how many hours have we been going around?" She even asks about a sleeping bag as their gear rests against a tree, arrows in a quiver, spear, and shield. Later that night, Bjorn sits watching her sleep, thinking how utterly exhausted she must have been. He notes that she never made a sound sleeping before, but then guesses maybe she just feels safer now. He looks up into the dark forest, reflecting on the massive rewards they've gained compared to the 1st floor, but also how they're starting to encounter other explorer groups, sometimes even with otherworldly species. Even though they've just passed by each other so far, the mere sight of them drains his energy. A big guy stares intently, as Erwin sleeps soundly with her silver hair spread out, until her amber eyes suddenly snap open. "Am I that pretty?" she teases, pulling the blanket over herself with a happy expression, leaving Bjorn to wonder what's up with her, because the other fairies he knew weren't like this. The next day, our transmigrated grinder is back to fighting goblins, barking orders like this side first, with Erwin quickly responding. Okay. They take another short rest, Erwin on a rock and Bjorn sleeping nearby, then continue their journey, Bjorn carrying his gear and Erwin following close. It's finally time to leave the labyrinth, he declares. Erwin, looking exhausted again, leans against her rolled-up sleeping mat. It'd be better to get there earlier than late, our barbarian with a gamer's brain states, looking alert. But then they spot new traps, meaning the goblin groups have respawned. We'll fight, Bjorn says with an intense expression. And lurking in the forest, a group of menacing blue goblins stares back. One blue goblin reacts in shock as it's struck, as Bjorn stands in a powerful stance, shrouded in a red aura, ready for battle. He looms over a group of terrified goblins, his eye glowing with an intense red light. While the blue goblins prepare for battle, our hammer-wielder brutally strikes one with his shield, barking that Erwin will handle the archers while he goes for the warriors first. He lands a powerful blow, causing an impact explosion. Bjorn stands victorious, surrounded by a faint glowing aura, confident he's become a master at these scuffles, dubbing himself Bjorn the Thousand-Armed and Thousand-Eyed Avalokiteshvara. But then, a goblin attacks him from behind in the shadows. He stands in the forest, surrounded by falling defeated goblins, realizing Erwin had only mentioned 2 archers. He gives a thumbs up and Erwin, looking happy and flustered after a successful shot, proudly announces, "Here." A defeated goblin releases a glowing essence, and she says she killed all the archers because she didn't want him worrying about them while he fought, before quickly apologizing. "Oh, is that why?" Bjorn replies, and she confirms that uncertain information could be more dangerous. Our tattooed tribal chief touches his nose with a self-satisfied expression. Suddenly, Erwin points toward a glowing item, shouting, "Something cool there!" A close-up shows the glowing essence dropped by the defeated goblin, and Bjorn recognizes it as an essence. He reacts with sweat on his brow, looking distressed. A flashback to his past life as Hansu Lee, he types at a keyboard, recalling that essences are part of Dungeon and Stone's skill system, granting passive and active skills as basically cheat keys, more valuable than treasure. He remembers there's a limit to how many you can absorb, and the ability varies wildly by goblin, meaning character fate depends on which ones are taken. Standing next to Erwin, he exclaims that the drop rate is near 0, and he never expected to see one here, while Erwin is surprised to see an essence. Erwin asks, "Become a goblin if you eat it." Our big guy quickly reassures her that she'd only earned part of the goblin's abilities, like the guy who chased them on the first floor took a razor mane wolf's essence to track them by scent, then asks, "Do you want it?" Erwin gives a confident thumbs up, making Bjorn think she's getting thick-skinned, but decides whatever. He contemplates his future, knowing he already has an essence in mind, and can't just take any without considering the long game, because a goblin archer's essence isn't that tempting for a barbarian like him. Bjorn starts to address Erwin seriously, but they're interrupted by an agitated explorer pointing and shouting, "Right now!" Erwin is terrified, asking what he means as she's cut off. Bjorn places his large hands heavily on her shoulders, realizing they were too lucky. He forces her out of the way, making her shriek, "Kayag!" as a bright flash of magic erupts from the essence. The male explorer looks on in shock, hand raised to his face. Bjorn stands stoically as the magical light fades behind him. The unknown explorer reaches out, shouting, "That essence was ours!" as a group of explorers gather in the dimly lit forest. Erwin stands defensively behind Bjorn, thanking him. Close-up shows an angry explorer sneering, and Bjorn faces the group. 2 other explorers stare with worried expressions. Our transmigrated grinder grips his weapon, ready to fight. "Come at me, go fuck off if you're scared," he challenges as the antagonist group approaches. Last we saw, our barbarian with a gamer's brain had just forced Erwin to absorb a rare essence, and now he's plunged headfirst into a brutal battle with the hostile explorers, hoping his fairy archer understood the signal to retreat. He charges forward, shield raised, and clashes with an armored opponent, as a sword strikes hard. An enemy brings his blade down, and our transmigrated grinder takes a punishing hit, feeling Elia's strength like a sledgehammer. But he can't back off, not when he needs to create an opening for Erwin. He continues to struggle, a weapon strike reflected in his sweat-beaded eye as a glowing attack slices through the air. Our tattooed tribal chief glares intensely when suddenly another enemy shouts, "AN arrow!" A glowing projectile strikes the ground near Bjorn, and he briefly wonders if it's a crossbow or Erwin, before realizing it has to be his fairy companion. He shouts, pushing through the intense combat, and fiercely blocks an arrow with his shield, demanding to know where his opponent thinks he's going. Bjorn spins in the chaos, as one of the enemies curses him, realizing he's blocking Erwin's arrows alone. Our shield-wielding strategist maneuvers, but knows he can't take them all on by himself. Facing a straw-hatted opponent, he deflects a blow, knowing he has to give up something to win. Injured, he keeps fighting, thinking he can't use his left arm anyway, so he might as well trade it off with the redhead. He bashes his shield against an armored opponent, gritting his teeth in pain, his eyes glowing with fierce resolve. The straw-hatted enemy jumps back, as Bjorn stays low with his shield up. He moves quickly, kicking up dust, and surprises the straw-hatted opponent, blocking a heavy strike with his shield, sending sparks flying. An ally in light armor defends as flames erupt, and another enemy praises Erwin's attack. Bjorn jumps down from an elevated position, mocking his enemy for thinking he could block all of Erwin's attacks, then leaps into the air like a propelled missile, axe in hand, to strike his straw-hatted opponent. But as he attacks, he's struck by a spirit arrow, a spirit archer's unexpected attack. He swings his shield against his opponent, breathing heavily, bloodied, and exhausted. Another enemy vows, "Take care of the fairy bitch," and goes after Erwin. Our transmigrated grinder grits his teeth, hearing, "Give up, Barbarian." But he blocks a powerful strike, deciding he'll just have to trust Erwin. He moves quickly, kicking up debris, and defends against another opponent, as the straw-hatted opponent reacts in surprise. Then a powerful collision sends Bjorn flying backwards through the air, crashing heavily onto the ground. The bald opponent curses in frustration, then swings a glowing weapon at Bjorn, who manages to block it with his shield. Bjorn, bloodied and sweating, braces himself and clashes his shield against his opponent's weapon, thinking that was the biggest mistake he could have made. He stares intensely, eyes glowing, then grimaces, pretending to swing, only to deliver a forceful headbutt, letting the true attack go. He pins his opponent down, who, bloodied and disoriented, clutches his own throat. Bjorn, breathing heavily, prepares to strike, yelling aggressively, asking if they truly thought he'd die in a place like this, and delivers a savage final blow. He stands alone, exhausted and bloodied, over the defeated body of his opponent. A weary warrior spits on the ground, grim and drained. Just then, Erwin runs through the forest, calling out to him. An unknown voice notes that Erwin seems to have one too. Erwin offers a potion to a bloodied Bjorn, urging him to drink it, but he asks if he should drink it, and she frantically says it's better on the wound. The potion bottle lies on the ground, spilling its fizzing contents, as Bjorn, kneeling, is engulfed in a red aura from the absorbed essence, feeling like his insides are boiling. He struggles with pain, his skin hot and itchy. Erwin talks to him while he remains seated and exhausted, telling him there are only 40 minutes until the first floor closes, no time to rest. He looks shocked and flustered, then flustered again, insisting he must have some reason for rushing. Bjorn quickly gathers gear from the fallen explorers, telling Erwin they don't have time and will just take equipment, magic crystal bags and backpacks. Erwin looks excited, holding a crossbow, calling out to him. They run toward their destination, where a bright magical portal glows in the night forest. Bjorn yells they're going in, and they jump into the glowing portal, escaping the labyrinth just in time. Heavy impacts strike, and Erwin celebrates with raised arms, saying that was fun, while Bjorn kneels on the ground. Erwin beams happily. Our transmigrated grinder looks concerned, realizing they had about 30 seconds left, a very close call. Erwin suddenly remembers the essence and asks about it, and Bjorn questions what she means by essence. Bjorn looks serious, then scratches his head in confusion, asking, "Shit, what was the tavern's name again?" He clutches his head in frustration. Erwin looks up at him with a reassuring smile, and they find themselves gazing at the distant city of Rafdonia. Our tattooed tribal chief lets out a sigh of relief. He stands fully geared after his return, feeling a triumphant sense of being back, as an unseen voice confirms they are in Arua. After making it out of the labyrinth, our barbarian with a gamer's brain observes the massive crowds in the city square, a tremendous number of people all gathered in one place. An acquaintance calls out Bjorn's name and title, and our protagonist struggles to remember who that is, before realizing it's Karak, Vanon's third son, and shaking his hand. Bjorn talks with Karak in the bustling city, then finds himself surrounded by a large crowd of tattooed barbarian warriors, who excitedly ask about the labyrinth. He looks annoyed, wondering if this is a whole reunion and where all these barbarians are popping up from. A group of warriors excitedly runs towards a doorway, and our weary warrior sighs, realizing he has to follow. At the counter, a female clerk quickly processes a bag of magic stones, counting out 41,498. Barbarian warriors celebrate their impressive haul, shouting about how amazing it is, and a close-up shows several bags filled with crystals. Bjorn watches in awe as the clerk processes stones at lightning speed. Then he stands tall, clutching his own bag, as the clerk announces his total. 182,413 stones total. His barbarian companions react with explosive enthusiasm, incredulous at his 180,000 stone haul. Bjorn remains stoic in the center, while his friends marvel and shout in jealousy, understands their passionate reactions as they chant his name, and grins mischievously, thinking, "Of course, I'd be the first ever barbarian to go into the labyrinth without anything and come back a civilized man." He cheers and raises his hammer high, declaring, "I am the best warrior." Our tattooed tribal chief is hoisted into the air by a crowd of cheering barbarians, finding the attention not bad, but sighs in exasperation as they continue to shout, looking at the city walls. The street is filled with various tribal figures, and the city plaza is packed with barbarians. Bjorn sits with them, contemplating his next move. Then he spots a group of fairies, looking surprised. Erwin smiles brightly, talking happily with her fairy companions about learning to work with spirits. Bjorn looks annoyed, comparing his savage companions to Erwin's refined friends, and feels envious. Erwin waves, realizing he saw her, and they exchange close-up reaction shots. Erwin looks shocked as a companion asks if she knows him, and she emphatically denies it. Meanwhile, a fellow barbarian questions Bjorn, who looks distressed and denies knowing her. Barbarian yells aggressively, and Erwin looks off-panel with a sharp, suspicious expression. Bjorn curses under his breath, realizing the situation is compromised. Erwin, in combat gear, looks frustrated, lamenting how barbarians never give a damn and wondering if their situation is like Romeo and Juliet. Two heavily tattooed barbarians walk through the street, and a muscular barbarian smiles broadly while talking to a warrior. Bjorn walks through the city streets at night, his boots caked in blood and dirt, deciding it'd be impossible to talk to Erwin in this atmosphere and that he'll have to find her later tonight. A young child runs and embraces an adult male barbarian, reunited after a dangerous mission. The barbarian kneels, hugging the child, as they both cry in relief. A man and a woman embrace joyfully, as Bjorn observes that the game had moments like this too. But then a grieving woman grabs a man by his shirt, desperately asking about her husband, and is met with a sorrowful apology. The child asks her crying mother about her brother. A woman comforts a grieving man, amidst others mourning, and Bjorn walks through the grim crowd, listening to their cries of despair. He observes the somber scene with a quiet expression. Gloved hand holds up a large wooden tankard of ale. Bjorn and a barbarian comrade aggressively drink from their tankards in a tavern. Our transmigrated tactician chugging ale with an intense expression. He sits at the tavern table, looking frustrated by the celebrating patrons, thinking that pouring alcohol down their throats is a waste of time, and he'd just be wasting his own by staying there. He stands up abruptly, stating he has somewhere to be. He stands amongst cheering barbarians, who are confused about his departure, and he wonders if they'll stop him from leaving. Bjorn walks through a doorway, as others cheer for him by name and title. And as he walks through a town gate, someone calls out for him to wait. He has a stoic expression, and then Miss Shaw Carlston looks down at him as he lies in the city streets, wondering what they should do that evening. Another woman lies on the ground, talking about her husband going to the labyrinth. Bjorn hangs his clothes on a rack in a room. He looks at his hand, reflecting on his safety, how even if he falls here he'd get up, and someone might even help him before he could. He walks into his room, thinking this place might be another world, much more barbaric than 21st century Earth. But despite that, he's in a steamy shower, showing off his tattoos, and thinks living in this city might not be too bad after all. He walks through the door into his room with a towel over his head, feeling refreshed. Then he collapses onto his bed in exhaustion, staring up at the ceiling. He rests in bed, contemplating his life, quietly admitting, "I really want to go home." A quiet night view of the city under a bright full moon, even if there isn't anyone to greet him home. Bjorn stretches his arms, seeing the current time is 21:18. He sits on his bed, looking towards the window, calculating that he must have slept around 4 to 5 hours since coming out of the labyrinth at noon. An older man looks surprised while holding a bag of potatoes. Bjorn stands in a dimly lit alleyway, speaking to an elderly vendor, asking if the tavern disappeared. He looks pensive, thinking he expected it, but the world in the game must be years behind this one. An exterior view of a building under the night sky. He stands in front of a tavern entrance called Python Puth, reading the sign. He looks up, contemplating that he can at least read this world's language, and should go to a library or similar place later. Inside, it's a busy tavern scene with a red-haired woman serving drinks, and Bjorn thinks it's a mess, wondering where Erwin is. Then he spots 2 fairy women at a table, one waving enthusiastically, and realizes the woman there is from earlier. Daria Whitember Tercia, Erwin's older sister, stares intensely with her arms folded across the table. Daria confronts Bjorn, while Erwin looks on nervously, and Daria, who introduces herself as Teresia, looks at Bjorn, who reacts with a grumpy expression, while he thinks that Erwin obviously didn't want to tell him her full name. Daria slams her hand on the table like a judge's gavel, intimidating Erwin, and asks flat out, "Barbarian, I have a question to ask. Why owe you? Why have you asked to see such a young girl so late at night in a tavern like this?" Her angry face dominates the final panel. Daria immediately corners our gamer chief in the tavern, demanding answers as other fairies look on with concern, and Bjorn, completely confused, asks what she means by her accusation. Daria's companion snaps, "Are you trying to play dumb?" Our transmigrated grinder innocently replies that only about 30 hours have passed, but immediately questions himself, realizing with a jolt that it wasn't 4, but 30 hours, which explains why he felt so incredibly refreshed when he woke up, because he had just slept for over a full day. He quickly apologizes to Erwin, crossing his arms in concentration as he admits he was asleep the whole time, a sight so rare that Erwin and the others are completely shocked, having never seen a barbarian apologize. Daria, however, isn't appeased and coldly asks why he called for Erwin so late. But our strategist with a barbarian build just picks at his ear, stating he has no obligation to tell her anything. Daria glares, a dark aura radiating off her, furious at these barbarians and finding Bjorn unexpectedly capable for a beginner. While Bjorn fires back, asking what that has to do with anything, and warns her to drop that attitude unless she plans on taking care of Erwin her entire life. He then pulls out a heavy leather pouch, explaining it's the 350,000 stones Erwin earned for the essences, and internally notes that this feels exactly like a K-drama scene. Daria, however, slaps the money pouch right onto his head, her annoyed eyes piercing him from across the table, as Bjorn tries to clarify if she's really not taking it, leaving Erwin shocked and others looking surprised. Bjorn, slightly annoyed, asks why, especially since they were a pretty compatible duo, while the two fairy sisters look sternly at him. He curses internally, thinking, to hell with personal connections, as Daria's gloved hand rests on Erwin's shoulder, and she declares that it's loot they earned together, of course. She smiles slyly at him, making our gamer chief wonder if she just tried to con him, and he realizes why barbarians hate these damn petty earheads. Erwin nervously calls out to him, and Daria points an aggressive finger, demanding an oath that he won't sleep with Erwin. Bjorn looks skeptical but agrees, swearing he won't, then smashes his chest, adding that he never cared about warriors' honor anyway. Erwin looks panicked and upset at his words. Daria turns to leave, with Erwin calling out, "Sis!" and she offers a quick thanks for saving Erwin, addressing our hero as Jandal's son, our strategist with a barbarian build size, as Erwin, hiding her face against him, looks up with concern, asking if her sister is mad. Bjorn thinks that he wouldn't reject the offer either if some high-level fairy offered to carry him, and Erwin hands him a bag, explaining it's his 63,000 stones, the magic crystals from the redhead and the crossbow guy. Bjorn realizes Daria knew what he was going to ask, and was worried he'd make some weird request, which explains her earlier oath. Erwin, however, excitedly demands alcohol for a return drink, explaining she didn't get to drink a drop yesterday, which makes Bjorn recall the game's drinking culture. Erwin eagerly explains that for fairies who live only in their shrines until adulthood, the first return drink has huge meaning, and corrects him when he mutters his thanks. She happily confirms they went through everything together in the labyrinth. Then our gamer chief jokes that it wouldn't be her first return drink, only for Erwin to declare it's her first, and his disbelief is met with her reminder that she's also 20. Gives a confident smirk, and they toast with their wooden mugs. Erwin happily tells him, "You did great." Erwin observes he's wearing a shirt today, and he retorts that she's wearing a skirt. Then he quickly moves to the important stuff, asking if she remembers what she asked him earlier, and our transmigrated grinder leans in with a serious expression, telling her he's thought of a way. Erwin, surprised, asks what he means, then smiles widely, agreeing that it sounds good. A barbarian with a gamer's brain needs some info, so he asks a fairy librarian where to find a book, and she just hits him with a strange bit of magic called farsative. Bjorn is shocked, wondering what the heck just happened to him, while the librarian looks like she's about to pass out. Our planning prodigy is immediately suspicious of this drowsy fairy, but then a glowing light leads him to a book, and he grabs it to start reading. He pores over the texts in the library, as the fairy librarian snoozes nearby, learning about the world's dark, cursed history, and how the royal family opened a portal to save their people. Next, our transmigrated tactician dives into alchemy and magic crystals, memorizing the theory since he can't quite grasp it. He reads about the barbarians and fairies' ancient hatred, then declares it's time for the fourth book. This one details how evil spirits from other dimensions possess bodies in their world, and how vigorously the royal family and temple have fought to eradicate them. Bjorn reaches for another volume, which chronicles the death of the first immortal king, Loigen III, 150 years ago. His next read is on dimension instability, which confirms his own experience of falling through a rare portal, and theorizes that entering at the moment a portal closes might explain the instability. Bjorn decides to read the rest later, realizing 3 days have flown by since he left the labyrinth. He quickly calculates his remaining time before the next labyrinth opening, when suddenly, a realization hits him. Before he can process it, Erwin starts pounding on his door, yelling for him to wake up, and as he opens it, she hits him with a blast of green magic. Our little fairy friend is beaming, announcing she succeeded with her contract, and proudly shows off her new swirling wind spirit. But as Bjorn watches, the magic around Erwin, combined with some mysterious item, causes her to panic and lose control, sending green energy swirling through his room. Erwin is horrified, apologizing profusely for the magical mess, but soon, a magical construct cleans up the damage. With everything done, Bjorn sits on the floor, and the tiny fairy responsible beams happily from his bed. A resourceful relic hunter then tells Erwin, who is still stressed, that he knows she feels connected to him because he's her first colleague. He smiles confidently, telling her he plans to stay permanently, so she can always find him if she has problems. Erwin blushes, surprised, but then beams again, happy to have connections. With 26 days left until the next labyrinth opening, Bjorn knows exactly how to use his time. He walks towards the Angry Bull Inn, where the barbarians are staying, with a serious expression. Inside, it's loud as ever, with other barbarians cheering about his stories. Bjorn finds their cramped sleeping quarters, wondering why the place is so cheap, and quickly realizes it's because they're expected to give up their beds for others. He's shocked to learn they want him to give up a bed, and then he spots Ainar looking surprised. She walks up to him, as our planning prodigy wonders why she wants him. Ainar explains she can't survive duels with the barbarians on pure combat skill, so Bjorn suggests they just go out to the field, realizing his request wasn't needed. She readily agrees to fight him whenever, as long as it's not in the mornings. Their duel begins, with Bjorn raising his shield as Ainar prepares to strike. A barbarian with a gamer's brain rushes forward, determined not to lose, and confronts Ainar, who swings her blade with an intense expression. The training area fills with dust and scattered weapons, and Bjorn ends up absolutely battered, lying defeated. Ainar checks on him, and he confirms he's okay. They continue their intense physical training, Bjorn grunting with exertion, as Ainar repeatedly challenges him to go again, clashing their weapons with furious strikes. Bjorn is left heavily breathing and exhausted under the night sky, his shield still raised. Ainar, also sweating, asks if he wants to continue because she wants to rest. Bjorn agrees, saying that's enough for today, and she congratulates him on his good work. He reflects that Ainar is smarter than most barbarians and unlikely to betray him. She looks at him, questioning his thoughts. Bjorn extends his hand, proposing they become teammates, and Ainar stares at his hand in confusion, asking, "Teammate?" She sternly tells him there's no need to explain further. Bjorn starts to panic, worried she doesn't like the conditions, but then he firmly grabs her hand, sealing the deal. Ainar smiles warmly, telling him to explain it later, and Bjorn beams, excited to have a new friend and teammate. As the golden sunlight bathes the barbarian shrine area, Bjorn and Ainar walk together towards the settlement buildings. He discusses past events with an elderly bearded barbarian, asking about a skill he desperately needs. The elder replies with a firm no, but Bjorn, with a focused expression, insists that he wants the undead seal. He declares it's an overpowered skill he needs to clear the labyrinth. This is an op skill he needs to take if he wants to clear the labyrinth. A calculating chief continues his research, learning how otherworldly species each have a specific trait, like fairies making spirit contracts, dwarves receiving the blessing of armor, and the ryanthropes bonding with spirit beasts. And for barbarians, it's the spirit seal. An older barbarian looms over him, demanding to know how a young warrior like Bjorn discovered such information, again casting suspicions on our game-savvy warrior. Bjorn is frustrated by the constant interrogation, but quickly explains he found all this info by diligently researching in the library. He stares intensely as the elder continues. The elder bursts out laughing, clapping Bjorn on the shoulder, then looks at him intently as he reveals the spirit seal costs a staggering 800,000 stones. Ainar is shocked by the price, but Bjorn remembers from the game that it was always expensive, and that higher ranks would need even rarer ingredients. But our tactical barbarian has a secret, and he shouts with excitement that he has the money. When the elder asks where he got so much, Bjorn replies he already has an excuse prepared, flashing a sly grin. He spins a tale about coming across a hurt fairy in the labyrinth, using her like a slave for magic crystals, then feeding her an essence and getting paid by her sister. He laughs maniacally, calling the fairies helpless. The other barbarians cheer and crowd around him, amazed by his tale. The elder then presents Bjorn with a gift, which turns out to be 200,000 stones returned to him. Our cunning commander triumphantly declares he will continue to exploit those earheads to become an even greater warrior, grinning mischievously. Next, Bjorn learns that the spirit seal works by making the body absorb magical essences to gain special powers, explaining why all barbarians are tatted. The elder warns him that this is a permanent choice, preventing other spirit seals, but Bjorn calmly accepts, knowing the advanced spirit seal of the immortal is the essence of a tanker barbarian. The ritual begins as the elder marks Bjorn's skin with a pointed tool, and magical energy burns in the tribal seal. Bjorn grimaces, enduring the intense pain, crying out that it hurts like hell, wondering if he'll have to endure this every time. Finally, the ritual is complete, and Bjorn pushes aside a curtain, thanking the elder. But the elder just laughs, leaving Bjorn confused and wondering if he did something wrong, his intricate tribal seal glowing on his back. With a cunning expression on the witch doctor's face, Bjorn decides it's best to get out of there before the elder gets suspicious. Our tactical barbarian walks away, admiring his muscular new form. He reflects on his training with Ainar, realizing he's not cut out to be a swordsman, and decides to focus solely on shield techniques, making swordsmanship a waste of time. In a weapon shop, Bjorn examines blunt weapons, finding them unsuitable. But then he finds a mace he likes, and also gets a customized helmet and half armor, spending a total of 530,000 stones. His coin pouch rapidly empties, as his money drops like the Titanic to the bottom of the ocean. His daily routine begins with Erwin waving hello in the morning, and they eat breakfast together, Bjorn noting how far she comes for cheap, yummy food. He then heads to the library to read until late afternoon, often finding the fairy librarian asleep. Evenings are spent at the tavern, where he overhears other explorers' dangerous tales, as our game-savvy warrior eats and thinks. At dusk, it's time for barbarian training, where Bjorn grapples and spars with other barbarians, consistently increasing his physical stats. After training, Ainar thanks him for the session, calling him the best ever warrior, Bjorn. She smiles, sweating from their hard work. Erwin then invites him to dinner, and happily waves goodbye to him later that night. Bjorn reflects on how fast time is flying by, checking his improved stat screen. Next, Bjorn and Ainar arrive at the Explorer Guild to receive Unity magic. They stand close together as they explain their request. The clerk asks if there are two of them, then instructs them to place their hands on a glowing crystal sphere. Bjorn notes that Unity magic is expensive for a one-time use, but necessary to start at the same location with teammates in the labyrinth. The clerk identifies them as rank 9 explorers, judging their rank by the amount of essence in their souls. He confirms the process as they maintain contact with the crystal. Later, Ainar reacts with shock at a table, asking what all the food is. Bjorn reveals he ordered the most expensive meal at the tavern, an 800-stone feast before entering the labyrinth. Ainar is speechless at the cost, wondering if it's a dream, and then takes a massive bite, her eyes widening as she declares it's incredibly good. She vows to earn a lot of money just to eat it again. Bjorn and Ainar stand with a comrade near the glowing portal, but are told they cannot enter yet. With a determined look, Bjorn enthusiastically points out the portal, saying they're finally here. He celebrates, declaring they're on time. He assures Ainar they'll get there, and she smiles, pointing to her temple, reminding him it's only been a month for them. Suddenly, the large magical portal erupts in light, and they're told they can now enter. Ainar yells to go, but Bjorn holds up a hand, telling her to wait. She enthusiastically calls his name, staring with an intense, shocked expression. Bjorn thinks the portal has gotten smaller since it opened, believing it was about this size when he entered last time. They wait for the guard's signal, our cunning commander's eye gleaming with determination. Once the guard signals, Bjorn shouts to Ainar, and they jump through the portal together. Ainar is struck by the magical energy, screaming that it's dangerous and she can't see, but Bjorn knew this would happen. He calms her, explaining they're in the dark region, and reveals he brought torches this time. They discover a dark stone monument, which Bjorn recognizes as a portal to the second floor. He smiles confidently, planning to use a game bug to go straight to the second floor, like any expert gamer would. After an intense training montage, our barbarian with a gamer's brain and our fierce warrior Ainar finally stand before the glowing portal to the labyrinth, with Bjorn, ever the leader, giving the command to enter. Inside, our transmigrated grinder treks through the dark, muddy terrain, while Ainar reminds him the chief said it would take at least 3 days to reach the second floor, a fact Bjorn knew from his books. The desolate landscape, twisted trees, and faint crying sounds confirmed to Bjorn what he already knew from the game. They've entered the land of the dead. Ainar looks back, confused, as Bjorn feels a surge of energy, a glowing aura filling his veins, and Ainar smiles, giving a thumbs up as he confirms it's a spirit status, which means he's leveled up. Bjorn quickly pulls up his stats, explaining that levels increase MP and the number of essences you can consume. And now at level 2, he can hold 2 essence orbs. Ainar is baffled that he leveled up without killing any monsters. So our barbarian with a gamer's brain explains that in this world, leveling up this way is called an accomplishment, a one-time EXP gain per monster type, which gets harder to earn later. He adds that the EXP earned from opening the portal doesn't stop after the first time, making it an easy way to gain experience, and he'll definitely need to gatekeep this trick. Alright, with Ainar silent for once, Bjorn decides they need to stay unseen, because soon experienced explorers will arrive, and they'll question why beginners like them are already here. So it's best they remain hidden and get out of this area, as Bjorn admits he's more scared of other explorers than the monsters. To help them navigate the darkness, Bjorn secures a torch to his helmet with rope, calling his creation Barbarian Candle Mode, since torches are actually magic tools here. The land of the dead has stronger monsters on average than the goblin forest, but it also has no traps, making it less tricky, which means it's much better for 2 barbarians to navigate. Ainar's eye gleams with focus, ready for battle, as 3 undead zombie-like creatures advance, and Bjorn notes there are only 3 because it's the first day, but there will be 3 times that amount by day 3. Ainar, itching for action, declares she'll get rid of them on her own, and dashes forward, kicking up dirt. She cries out, swinging her blade, striking an undead creature, her expression determined, until her expression turns visibly shaken and stressed. Ainar stands close to Bjorn, looking fearful, as our tattooed tribal chief calmly identifies their opponent as a banshee, and she asks, "Wouldn't it be dangerous?" Bjorn explains the banshee will be after them until they leave the labyrinth, causing Ainar to stammer about a CCCC curse, and she grabs onto his arm in sheer terror, trying to escape. Suddenly, skeletons charge, and Ainar, still panicked, hides behind a stoic Bjorn. Ainar quickly recovers, clearing her throat to announce she'll take care of them, and smashes a skeleton with her greatsword, splintering its bones. She looks curiously at Bjorn, who dismisses her question about a strange noise with a casual nothing. Our adventurers continue their trek, boots crunching through the dark, encountering elder ghouls twice the size of normal ones, alongside skeleton warriors and skeleton archers. But Bjorn notes there was very little difficulty, since there were only a few on day 1, and his battle ability had grown. First, his mace is now the perfect size and weight for him, as he strikes an elder ghoul in the head. Next, his vest-shaped armor reduces the surface area he needs to protect with his shield, letting him fight more aggressively, and his steel helmet, while not stopping a crossbow, deflects an arrow off its side. He smashes a skeleton warrior, sending bones flying like shattered pottery, scoffing that it should get stronger and come back, his eye closing in intense focus. Meanwhile, Ainar's tribal tattoos flex as she swings her massive greatsword, obliterating multiple skeleton warriors. Bjorn looks at her with admiration, thinking she's good. As she attacks yet another warrior, he shouts as he strikes a skeleton, enjoying the combat, finding the feeling just rolls off the tongue. Bjorn and Ainar stand side by side, battle-ready, and our barbarian with a gamer's brain feels this is refreshing compared to fights with Erwin, realizing this is what it's like to be in a barbarian party. Suddenly he looks surprised, noticing an injury on his arm, a visible smoking wound. Ainar, looking excited, asks if it's the spirit seal thing, and from behind, Bjorn demonstrates his natural regeneration. Steam rising from his back as he explains the undead seal's effect heals 0.5 cm deep injuries in about a minute and quickly recovers stamina. He steps firmly onto the dungeon floor, noting the banshee's howling has gotten much louder, which means 8th rank monsters will soon appear. Ainar reacts in shock to a new sound, asking Bjorn what it is, and Bjorn declares it a death fiend, telling Ainar to get into position, then admits it looks scarier than he expected. He shouts commands to Ainar, as the death fiend leaps down like a dropped boulder, roaring toward her. Bjorn blocks its incoming attack with his shield, while Ainar swings her weapon against its clawed limb. Our tattooed tribal chief braces himself behind his shield against the monster, which attacks with sudden speed. Bjorn curses, straining to hold it back. Fuck! His eyes showing intense concentration as he realizes, this is hard. It feels like I struck stone. The death fiend roars, readying another strike, and Bjorn struggles, grunting under its assault. He shouts that it's super strong, but he's managed to turn its attention onto himself, as Ainar lunges to attack. Ainar's eyes widen in shock, as her blade fails to penetrate the death fiend. The death fiend's eye glares maliciously, and a violent impact sends Ainar flying backward through the air, causing her to cry out. Her blade impacts the ground forcefully, kicking up dust, and Bjorn holds his greatsword defensively, confirming the monster is sturdy, as the death fiend was infamous in the game for its good defense. But he never expected it to be this hard, especially as Ainar's nick on its body rapidly heals with purple energy, which Bjorn recognizes as the death fiend's passive skill, body preservation. Purple aura flares around its eyes, and Bjorn curses, with Ainar asking what that is, as a ghoul's hand emerges from the dark ground, revealing the death fiend's active skill, Call of the Dead. As the death fiend unleashes its active skill, the Call of the Dead, summoning a horde of ghouls, our strategic chieftain barks commands, telling Ainar to face the ghouls while he takes on the death fiend. He moves quickly, blocking a clawed limb with his shield, then swings his weapon in the heat of battle. Bjorn grunts, deflecting a powerful blow, reacting to the intensity of the fight. As he deflects yet another attack, weapons clashing and sending sparks flying. Ainar, our relentless warrior, calls out his name, engaging in fierce battle against the monstrous ghouls, as one ghoul creature is defeated. She swings her large sword, striking another monster, while our gamer-minded barbarian delivers a powerful strike with his mace, warning her not to get distracted. Bjorn follows up with another powerful blow, and the monster reacts with intense anger, roaring. Bjorn and Ainar coordinate their attack as the monster staggers back, revealing a bleeding wound on its skin. Our transmuted tank observes the wound, thinking that one felt good, and it must have taken a pretty good amount of damage since it's bleeding, as he strikes its leg. But suddenly Bjorn is knocked airborne, landing on the ground, bracing himself, and cursing that it's still fine. Dark purple liquid splatters on the ground, and Bjorn looks on with concern, realizing this attack kills goblins in one hit. The large three-eyed monster stands, its wound healing right away, and our strategic chieftain contemplates his next move. Frustrated he can't attack fast enough to keep up with its regenerative speed. Suddenly, Ainar leaps onto the monster's back, like a spring released, gripping it firmly, focused on her attack, and Bjorn realizes she's trying to mess with its balance. Praising Ainar for the good idea, Bjorn strikes the monster's leg, and together they execute a perfect takedown. The monster falls to the ground, struggling as they stand over it, and Bjorn notes its cries, then sarcastically asks if it can't get up on its own. He laughs, looking down at the defeated monster as they continue attacking it, both finding this unexpected fight fun. Suddenly, Ainar points out a large, glowing pink magic crystal on the ground, calling Bjorn's attention to its huge size. Bjorn and Ainar react in shock to find it's only worth 100 stones. Our gamer-minded barbarian looks serious, admitting it's undeniably a low price, and Ainar asks how much the cream pie at the inn was, showing her unique way of counting money, which she then laughs about. Excited, Ainar raises her arm, ready to hunt, telling Bjorn to relax and go hunt, and reminding him they're splitting 8-2, so he's getting 0.2 of a death fiend. Bjorn, watching fairies look on, admits it's not so bad to go around with a barbarian like Ainar, finding Erwin a bit passive by comparison. Our dynamic duo attacks a large monster together. Even in chibi form, they deliver a beating. Our strategic chieftain observes the dungeon, narrating that at the beginning of Dungeon and Stone, most people base their build on the low-rate essence they picked up, but they haven't gotten any yet. He rests with Ainar, thinking he needs an essence soon as day 2 begins. The death fiends now appear in pairs, but our duo had learned how to deal with them, so it wasn't as difficult as expected. They knocked one down, then worked together to knock down the other, knowing that if they couldn't kill them quickly, ghouls would surround them, forcing them to run like hell, as death fiends don't chase enemies out of their territory. But by afternoon, death fiends started appearing in threes, which was too many for just the two of them. As the second day ended, they stopped hunting death fiends, and Ainar suggests a cozy spot to rest, until they both react in alarm as three explorers approach in the dark. The explorers are startled, and Bjorn glares at them, telling them to get lost. Ainar, our relentless warrior, adds a menacing glare, telling them to fuck off right now. The three explorers are terrified and apologize, running away from the formidable duo. Ainar's silhouette stands firm, and she declares they need to move. Walking through a dark, foggy forest path, Bjorn thinks Ainar didn't like humans last time either, wondering if something happened in the previous labyrinth exploration. He decides he'll have to ask her later as she walks ahead through the atmospheric landscape. Bjorn comments they won't find a spot as nice as the last one, as Ainar agrees they'll just find an okay place, when shocked expressions cross their faces as they hear cries of help and please. Bjorn and Ainar stand alert, looking at each other, realizing this isn't the sound of a human being attacked by a monster, but definitely a person killing another. They survey the dark ruins as a bright magical flash erupts, and find a small red shape on the ground. Bjorn inspects 4 fresh corpses, noting no monsters, only traces of a campfire and poison. HMPH, he thinks, walking through the dark forest with Ainar, and then they spot a mysterious cloaked woman standing over the dead bodies. The woman, holding a bloodstained dagger, asks if they are beginners, and Bjorn realizes she is a plunderer. Ainar and our resourceful chief charge the red-haired enigma, ready for a fight, but she swiftly parries Bjorn's attack and lands a blow on Ainar. He barely blocks her next strike with a spark, realizing she is incredibly strong and must have multiple essences. Our quick-witted leader attempts to pin her, but she strikes him down in a blur. Bjorn feels his strength drain, realizing she pierced his armor and spine with a dagger, using a basilisk's paralytic poison. She then turns and strikes Ainar in the back, leaving both of them helpless. Bjorn grinds his teeth, furious at Ainar's suffering, as the red-haired enigma stands over them, offering a deal. Their lives if they swear to keep silent. Bjorn, paralyzed and aware of her overwhelming superiority, quickly agrees to swear on his warrior's honor, but Ainar hesitates, feeling the deep shame of such an oath. Bjorn urgently yells at her, reminding her that pride is useless if they die, begging her to trust him. The plunderer, now identified as Arua Raven, warns Ainar she has no choice, and Ainar, bleeding and distressed, finally swears. Our gamer Barbarian then asks Arua Raven what floor she operates from, and she coldly replies, the 8th. Bjorn immediately understands the massive power gap, realizing they only survived because of her prior promise to the explorers she looted. Arua Raven warns them it will be different next time, calling them plunderers before walking away. Bjorn and Ainar then escape through a glowing portal. Ainar collapses, still deeply pained by having to swear on her honor, so Bjorn reassures her that the warrior who survives is the strongest. However, our gamer Barbarian internally admits he doesn't feel like a true barbarian himself, recalling how he once had to beg for a potion, treated like a dog by a swordsman, and how he had always prioritized safety above all else. He realizes he can't just survive like this anymore, and decides on a change of plans. Speaking to a sleeping Ainar, he resolves that since chaos is inevitable, it's better to attack first and search for it. Soon, our duo navigates a dark, rocky tunnel, a difficult area with 4 types of monsters and no visibility, making it a perfect place to hide secrets. They discover a glowing stone monument, and our gamer Barbarian explains it's a memorial stone that opens an instance dungeon. To activate the first floor's rupture, they need to place magic crystals from a goblin, gnome, ghoul, razor, mane wolf, and crucially, a death fiend onto the stone. Since they already possess the death fiend crystal, Bjorn excitedly tells Ainar they are ready to enter. A resourceful chief makes a decisive facial expression, planning a new course of action. Bjorn looks down at the sleeping Ainar as he speaks to her, asking if she knows it comes with great danger, but that she is strong anyway. He explains that life is full of inevitable chaos no matter which path they take, so to attack first is better, and they will search for the chaos first. Soon, our duo navigates a dark, rocky tunnel, where the system displays they've defeated a gnome and a razor mane wolf, a difficult area with 4 types of monsters and poor visibility, making it a perfect place to hide secrets. They discover a glowing stone monument, and our gamer Barbarian explains it's a memorial stone that opens an instance dungeon. To activate the first floor's rupture, they need to place magic crystals from a goblin, gnome, ghoul, razor, mane wolf, and crucially, a death fiend onto the stone. Since they already possess the death fiend crystal, Ainar laughs happily as Bjorn explains that with an 8th rank monster crystal from the 2nd floor, the rupture will open. Bjorn explains that in the game, it's called an instance dungeon, a dungeon cleared by chosen members, and he places a glowing red crystal onto the memorial stone. He then excitedly tells Ainar they are ready to enter, as a glowing red portal begins to manifest and open, explaining that the Death Fiend's magic crystal opens an instance dungeon with a capacity for 5 people, and the difficulty depends on the party members. The labyrinth, already a maze, sometimes rips open with a rupture, which is essentially an instance dungeon, appearing randomly on each floor as a new realm. These temporary realms have cooldowns, with the first floor's rupture naturally reopening only after 3 months in city time. But waiting that long is super inefficient for our transmigrated grinder. Under a red, apocalyptic sky, Our barbarian with a gamer's brain and his spear sister walk towards a dark castle where crows circle ominously. Ainar is instantly worried by the sheer size of the blood-tinted castle, which Bjorn knew would pop up once he used the Death Fiend's magic crystal. Our tattooed tribal chief watches the glowing red rift, nervous about the automatically chosen party members, because the important thing now is who will appear. Ainar sees a boot emerging from the swirling red energy and shouts in surprise, wondering who it could be. Meanwhile, in a crystal cave, the young fairy Erwin looks worried, and her older sister Daria reassures her that a teammate is just a teammate after taking a dagger from her. Erwin can't help but wonder if Bjorn is up on a higher floor, earning a whole lot of money right now. Daria smiles, explaining that the first floor's rupture should open soon, as 8 months have passed since the last one. She slyly thinks that Barbarian is probably inefficiently climbing the floors, and confidently tells Erwin that in just a year, she'll be unbelievably stronger than him. Suddenly, Daria's eye widens because a dark, cracked rupture forms in the air, glowing red, and she yells Erwin's name, pointing towards the opening. The two fairy explorers rush towards the glowing red rift, engulfed in energy as they stand back to back, facing the cavernous opening. Back with our barbarian duo, a dwarf explorer appears laughing and gesturing, happy to finally be in, assessing them as two barbarians, a prospect he finds promising. Next, a woman's high-heeled boot steps onto the ground, and it's our red-haired wizard, Arua Raven, accompanied by her carrier, who was wondering where the rupture would take them, now recognizing it as the blood-tinted castle. The dwarf observes the new mage, intrigued by the party composition and that a mage appeared here, and Ainar is amazed by the arrival of the wizard. Arua, smiling warmly, introduces Tarjan as her professional carrier, a polite man who has worked with her for 3 years, which explains his nice equipment. Our bookish barbarian notes that she seems a bit condescending, but compared to the absolute assholes most mages were in the game, she's practically a saint. Bjorn and Ainar introduce themselves as Jandal's son and Feneline's second daughter, respectively, as they shake hands. The dwarf and Arua then question why Bjorn and Ainar are still on the first floor, without revealing their own methods for getting there. A transmigrated grinder realizes they're not talking about their own method and concludes this is ladder kicking. Arua proposes that the loot be divided among them, excluding Tarjan, and asks if everyone will follow her orders. Man Yurikfried, the Beastman explorer, readily agrees, stating it's common sense to follow the mage, especially since a mage convinced the royal family that evil spirits needed to be killed. Bjorn internally thinks he has to listen to the mage, but then outwardly disagrees with something. Ainar excitedly shouts, "I disagree," shocking Bjorn, as she passionately declares, "I want Bjorn to lead us." Our frustrated leader tries to shut her up, but our loyal spear sister continues, calling him a warrior wiser than anyone who also reads 6 hours a day, which makes the calculating mage react in shock. Arua remarks that a barbarian reading is unique, but Ainar insists, "He's not unique, he's great." She grabs our bookish barbarian's shoulder, proclaiming him a great warrior named Bjorn. The dwarf and Arua look on wide-eyed, while Bjorn covers his face, muttering, "Fuck, please stop." Ainar reacts in flustered shock, shouting, "W-wife?" Arua observes the intense conversation, telling Ainar she doesn't need to be embarrassed, then cuts them off, suggesting they all stop and get going. Our tattooed tribal chief internally notes that the conversation topic changed, and thankfully, Raven doesn't seem interested either. The dwarf, looking frustrated, questions if they're really leaving when they only know each other's names. Arua states that just she and Tarjan would suffice, implying she wants to take all of the Guardian's loot. The dwarf looks agitated, gripping his axe, and questions if she intends to take all of the Guardian's loot. A barbarian with a gamer's brain explains that the Guardian's loot is the Rupture's flower, and while financially stable mages prioritize research, for explorers, money is the most important thing. Arua offers to give them all the magic crystals from the Rupture, but the bearded dwarf intensely refuses to let her have that. A red-haired wizard looks genuinely taken aback, probably not expecting such a strong response, making Bjorn wonder if she's truly that naive. Arua then concedes, agreeing to let the dwarf have the numbers item while she takes the Guardian's essence. He suggests that she and Tarjan will then roll dice for the Rupture Stone, prompting Bjorn to realize they've been excluded from this loot conversation. A frustrated leader stands tall and stern, declaring he can't go back without taking anything for himself. He tells them that much should be good enough, but then provocatively questions their greed, asking if they truly need 2 barbarians in the party. The dwarf reacts with anger to Bjorn's demand for a Rupture Stone, calling him pal, while our transmigrated grinder internally curses, realizing it didn't work and that she was only acting nice until now. He holds up 2 fingers, demanding a stone. Arua, with a serious, intense expression, looks down at Bjorn. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain concludes that's all they can get, reasoning this place won't have any tempting essences considering their level, and asks if they've reached an agreement. The dwarf, with a hammer, and the woman agree to keep their promise, as his wizard and dwarf teammates walk away, saying their bodies are itching to fight. Our frustrated leader watches them go. He realizes once again that he needs to get stronger, resolving that regardless of these ladder-kicking sons of bitches, he will climb up the ladder no matter what. The blood-tinted castle challenges our heroes with 4 distinct chapters, from urban warfare in the outer walls and an underground prison, all the way to the castle lord's demon-worshipping room. Now our barbarian with a gamer's brain and his crew, including Ainar, face 2 massive gargoyle statues, notorious for their petrification skill, which usually keeps them motionless until combat starts. Suddenly, cracks appear, and the gargoyles come to life as party members brace for impact, their eyes glowing brightly before they attack, and one unleashes its dreaded petrification skill, causing agony as stone spreads across a character's shoulder, making Ainar scream out to Bjorn for help. Before the petrification can fully take hold, the blonde wizard steps forward, her eyes determined, and she chants a spell, making our barbarian with a gamer's brain realize she is canceling magic, turning the gargoyle into one that can't petrify its opponents. And as it lunges downward, our tattooed tribal chief seizes the moment, unleashing a powerful strike with his axe, declaring the fight easy, while Ainar grips her greatsword tightly, focused on the battle. With a final shout, our transmigrated grinder delivers a devastating blow, creating a flash of light as his axe strikes, and the monster collapses to the floor, Bjorn finishing his downward strike against the defeated foe. Its glowing red eye flickers out for good. Standing victorious beside Ainar and the kneeling dwarf, the wizard and her carrier observe the aftermath. The dwarf explorer laughs, wiping his mouth, pleased with Bjorn's performance. Suddenly, a magic crystal floats in the air, surprising everyone as someone exclaims, "BBJORN? The magic crystal is moving on its own." The wizard offers to collect them for now, promising to divide them later, a practical offer that makes the dwarf appreciate her with a laugh. Venturing deeper, the labyrinth becomes incredibly dark, prompting a need for light. The wizard quickly provides it with a spell, illuminating grotesque deadmen. Ainar and her companions stand in shock at the sight of these monsters. These deadmen are rankless creatures that yield no EXP or magic crystals, and their corpses don't vanish unless they spit out an essence, making them a waste of mana to fight. The exploration team notes it would indeed be a waste to use magic against them. Despite the waste, the roaring deadmen crowd together, forcing the party to charge into the horde, with Ainar leading the charge, slashing through one monster with her blade, and delivering a powerful strike against another, knocking it back. Bjorn follows up with a crushing axe strike, slamming it into the ground, and prepares a final, powerful overhead blow, determined to end the fight. But his eye widens in shock when he sees a glowing horn on the ground, and someone exclaims, "That is the DEADMEN commander's blowhorn." Ainar and another explorer look at the blowhorn, curious about its use. Their path is then blocked by a massive steel door, too sturdy for the dwarf's hammer, so the wizard confidently steps up to handle it. Arua fires a powerful, fiery spell at the door, causing an explosion which our barbarian with a gamer's brain and his companions watch. As Bjorn looks on, his face drawn tight like a bowstring, with dust falling from the ceiling like fine snow. The blonde female wizard stands confidently after her display. Reaching the first chapter's true challenge, the castle entrance drawbridge, our transmigrated grinder and his companions stand on a high platform overlooking the dungeon. A foot steps onto the stone ledge. The blonde wizard instructs Ainar to blow into the previously found horn. Ainar, a little surprised, blows the horn as instructed, and to her shock she shouts, "WHWHAT?" The bridge is coming down. The massive stone bridge begins to lower from the castle wall. Ainar's face expresses her complete surprise, but then blood-like water rises around them as creatures emerge. Ainar screams, "Wait, THTHTHTHTHRE is something I in the water." She looks away in alarm as the blonde wizard speaks to her. A bloody hand grips the edge of the stone bridge, and a system message pops up. "Endure until the drawbridge is down." More creatures emerge from the blood as the party defends the bridge, fighting against endless deadmen, a truly difficult chapter. Despite the odds, the blonde wizard smiles confidently, then gathers everyone for a powerful, large-scale spell, raising her staff and casting a light spell. The exploration party battles against shadowy monsters, with our tattooed tribal chief visible in the foreground. An armored explorer stands amidst swirling green magical energy during the fight. Standing in a chamber littered with defeated monsters, the party faces a large stone door. The grotesque bodies are scattered across the floor. The dwarf explorer looks on, surprised, while the blonde wizard stands nearby. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain reflects on the blonde wizard's unexpected skill and the significant power gap between them. The blonde wizard smiles after the battle, noting how quickly they finished. Stone bridge inside a dark red environment appears with an entrance ahead, inviting them to go inside. With the first chapter of the blood-tinted castle complete, our transmigrated grinder and his companions walk towards the massive gate. He reflects that the chapter was disappointingly easy to finish. As Ainar's barbarian ritual tattoos glimmer, our gamer barbarian, Bjorn, has a moment of clarity, realizing that no matter how realistic a game's drawings are, they still can't quite capture the sheer terror of facing a monster in person, especially when it's screaming in your face, or when it's launching bits of itself at your party. He watches the mage who claimed to be so skilled at dissections now screaming in distress, vomiting all over the floor, while the dwarf, supposedly an experienced explorer who'd seen countless monsters, looks absolutely terrified. Bjorn mentally snarks that these two acted like he and Ainar were beginners, But it's only the two barbarians who are still in their right minds here, ready to actually fight. Ainar rounds on the panicking team, demanding to know what they're doing, and shouts for everyone to move as a truly disgusting, green magical projectile of corpse sludge launches their way. The ghastly missile screeches through the air, and Ainar instantly warns the dwarf, but it's too late as the projectile splatters across his face, leaving him screaming that his eyes are burning. Our transmigrated tactician observes that the dwarf is out of commission in the blink of an eye, and the dependable mage is still throwing up. Bjorn realizes they're all going to die if he doesn't take charge, so he makes the snap decision to draw the monster's attention, leaping into the fray with a battle cry that screams, "Come and get me!" He grips his mace, preparing for the confrontation, recalling that the corpse golem's attack pattern is usually simple. It just throws corpse bombs at anyone too far away. He grunts through the fight, knowing the danger, as the corpse golem attacks aggressively. Bjorn deftly dodges a lunge with his shield, knowing he shouldn't get too close to a corpse golem, because if he does, the monster will just switch targets to the mage, which would be the absolute worst-case scenario since she's still useless. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain needs to keep his distance until the mage gets it together, luring the golem to stall for time. Just as he's thinking this, the exhausted mage, Arua Raven, finally manages to gather herself, casting a powerful spell, and unleashes a massive fire spell that engulfs the golem. Bjorn watches, momentarily stunned as the monster is consumed by fire, and Ainar, equally amazed, shouts, "Is this the power of a mage?" The first phase of the corpse golem fight, which usually takes a long time and many torches, is finished off with just one spell, leaving the monster's outer body powerless. The golem still enveloped in intense flames, Bjorn shouts for Ainar to come over and aim for its chest, explaining that a corpse golem is a rank 7 monster, but they charge forward together to deliver the final strike. Bjorn strikes the chest, causing an explosion of light. He looks on, breathing heavily from the exertion, while Ainar asks if what's coalescing nearby is the essence. Bjorn confirms it, the corpse golem's essence. Loot from Guardians is something all explorers desire, and this large, glowing green magic stone is definitely a valuable prize. Our gamer barbarian considers the possibility, finding it almost weird that it took them this long to come across an essence, as he and Ainar stand in the labyrinth water, looking at the glowing essence on the ground, wondering what they're going to do. He then reminds Arua that they were the ones who did most of the work, and that was what they had promised. Bjorn internally grumbles that he actually wanted 2 essences, perhaps from a death fiend or a chimera wolf. He didn't expect to earn the essence of a rank 7 elite monster like the corpse golem, which only appears once in the entire blood-tinted castle. He rubs his chin, evaluating his options carefully, and looks over a system display board listing the corpse golem's various stat adjustments. Our transmigrated tactician considers the trade-offs of the essence's stat changes while holding a piece of bone, then strikes a heroic pose as he contemplates the utility of his new stats. He activates the flesh explosion skill, causing energy to erupt from his shoulders, sighing that while a corpse golem's essence is great, it eats away at potion and equipment costs. Meanwhile, the dwarf looks at a discarded metal cylinder on the ground, filled with shame, sitting tiredly, looking like a scolded child. Bjorn sits down with him, reminding him that he would have been dead if it weren't for Ainar, and the dwarf admits he knows. He continues to talk to the dwarf in the dim dungeon light, leaning forward, keeping the conversation going as Ainar watches over them. Arua, kneeling distressed, offers a sincere apology to Bjorn. Bjorn kneels in the dim dungeon light, listening to her apology, his hand resting near her staff on the damp ground. He gestures with his barbarian helm on, stating simply that they got rid of the corpse golem. The wizard adjusts her large red hat, looking down, and replies that she knows. Bjorn argues that they saved her and the dwarf, doing more than their share of responsibility, and Arua agrees. His hand rests on his knee as he prepares to make a demand. Bjorn stands over the seated Arua, telling her they'll take the rupture stone as payment. The rest of the exploration team stands together in silence, as the dwarf explorer speaks up, laughing as he looks at Ainar, saying he would have died if it weren't for their barbarian lady. Arua listens then, despite being against it, agrees that if they come across a rupture stone, she'll give them a fair chance to claim it. Bjorn, wearing his helm, looks down with a stern expression, concluding that it's good enough for now. He maintains his serious expression, continuing, and then drops the bombshell. The corpse golem just dropped an essence. Arua gasps in shock, covering her mouth, exclaiming that it's even rarer than a guardian's essence. A brutal strategist observes Arua's perfect reaction, thinking, "I knew she would react like that," then looks intently at his teammates as he prepares for the real negotiation. Arua stares in surprise, Bjorn's hand visible in the foreground, as he asks what she thinks, leaving her with a tense, concerned expression clutching her pendant. The world of Rafdonia is full of dangers, from your everyday mutant goblins carrying bows and swords, to much rarer creatures like the towering corpse golem. But then there are the truly weird threats, like a mimic chest with sharp teeth just waiting to chomp down on unsuspecting explorers. Or, even worse, advanced named monsters such as the chilling vampire duke. Our gamer barbarian is knee-deep in trouble, sprinting through a dark environment while carrying a distressed fairy ally on his back. He barely dodges an unseen attacker who just popped up out of nowhere, surprised by the sudden appearance of a vampire. He barely has time to register that it's the vampire Duke Cambormere himself. Our transmigrated grinder is already frustrated by his companion, telling the fairy to run instead of whining, as she frets that this has never happened before. And he can't help but inwardly agree, even if there are advanced mutant monsters on the 3rd floor. Finding a vampire duke on the 1st floor is a whole new level of unexpected chaos, something he only learned about after watching a stream. He just keeps marveling at the situation, but our gamer Barbarian wonders if her curiosity ever stops, even in urgent situations like this. Bjorn quickly recalls his past life playing the game, remembering that he just had a feeling and noticed something was off because of the door handle's color. He tried hundreds of times to get this duke by copying that player, but it never worked, so he rewatched the recording dozens of times before noticing that small change. The only thing different in that recording was the handle color, and he realizes he just had a feeling because of that small detail. He wonders if he would have noticed before the door was opened, if he hadn't been so excited from all their recent luck. Back in the present, the exploration team is debating whether to fight or flee, with some arguing that they can't leave without killing the monster, and others just wanting to get to sunlight. But before they can decide, a shadowy entity forms right in front of them, manifesting. The team recognizes it as spiritification, and they're annoyed by monsters that use magic. A wizard frantically prepares a blinding light spell, yelling for everyone to close their eyes. A blinding flash of light erupts, filling the dungeon with its fierce glow as the wizard's staff emits a powerful magical burst. Everyone shields their eyes, and when the light fades, our tattooed tribal chief realizes the vampire is gone, leaving the team in an empty room, stunned by its sudden disappearance. But the danger is far from over as someone screams for Bjorn, revealing that Arua Raven, their mage, is down. Team member carries an unconscious Arua away from the danger. Arua is coughing up blood, and the team panics, wondering if she suffered internal injuries, especially since a vampire's essence shouldn't have this kind of effect. Our gamer Barbarian quickly analyzes the situation, wondering if it's another monster's essence, because the video he watched ended before the person could do anything. So he never saw what kind of essence the Duke had, only the pixelated "you died" screen. As the party argues again about how to escape, our transmigrated grinder confidently steps forward, holding his weapon and assuring them he knows the way out. Thinks to himself, damn it, the priority is to make it out alive even if I get treated as a weird barbarian. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain leads the party, including an unidentified dwarf, through the dark, winding corridors of the labyrinth, proving that he did memorize the way like he said. His teammates stare in shock as they spot the exit, clearly amazed that he actually memorized the complex route. But the respite is short-lived as Bjorn's eyes widen in intense realization, knowing that the vampire Duke is after them again, pushing them to hurry to the exit. Our tattooed tribal chief sprints forward, shield raised, as the party dashes through the labyrinth, reaching the doorway with Arua Raven looking alarmed and fearful behind them, finally making it to the glowing entrance. Safe for now, the party stands together with Bjorn still holding the fairy, while Ainar Fenelin and the dwarf prepare for battle, knowing that spiritification is especially weak to light. Ainar, our loyal barbarian comrade, smiles excitedly, clenching her fist and telling the dwarf that Bjorn is a great warrior, and he can do anything. But the looming problem quickly rears its head. The sun is setting over the ruins of Rafdonia, meaning the vampire will be back. Our gamer barbarian immediately commands his team to get moving and carry the mage, sharply cutting off their protests. He sees a teammate leaning over the exhausted mage, showing concern. Bjorn demands, "Do you want to die here? Get up right now if you want to live." A teammate looks on with a strained expression. With firm determination, he decides this is the only chance he has, no matter how much he thinks about it. He needs to get that special item they passed by earlier. He wastes no time, his sharp weapon striking a surface with a powerful magical attack, causing debris to fly and shattering a goddess statue. Bjorn stands in the ruined area, realizing that he knew it, and there, in the broken neck of the statue, sits a glowing bottle of goddess tears. He explains that it's a one-use item, good for healing, and also for attacking evil-type monsters. Our transmigrated grinder stands over the seated wizard, Arua Raven, who agrees that the Duke will be back as soon as the sun sets. Arua explains she experienced pain sharing because the Duke has the essence of an 8th-rank monster, and it's a good thing he had it. Bjorn asks Arua how long she needs to heal, wondering if 20 minutes will be enough, causing her to look annoyed and ask if he knows how rude it is to ask a mage about their spells. Our gamer barbarian smirks, touching his chin, acknowledging that he declares, "The ME now is a barbarian, the peak of rudeness, who doesn't care about manners except when talking to the king," leaving Arua looking shocked and confused. Despite her annoyance, Arua states she can use Sunspot, and Bjorn immediately asks if she can combine it with a reinforcement spell. She confirms she can with more mana, but it will take about 10 minutes to gather, meaning our tattooed tribal chief has to endure somehow for 30 minutes total. When Arua asks who the leader is, Bjorn confidently suggests he is. Ainar chimes in that it doesn't really matter, but then declares her trust in him, saying, "I'm sorry, but I trust this pal." A bearded teammate smiles widely, looking confident, while another character offers a small, hesitant thanks. And Arua Raven looks surprised by the team's quick acceptance. Just as the plan solidifies, the vampire antagonist looms, revealing sharp fangs and taunting them, saying how strange it is that he can't hold back his bloodthirst when he sees Bjorn. He asks if they can guess the reason, then announces, "He's here." The team quickly forms a defensive formation, knowing they have 30 minutes until the spell is ready, and they have to hold on until then. A barbarian with a gamer's brain finds his mind a blank and his vision blurry, grappling with the choice of what to abandon and what to protect, knowing he must force himself to stay strong. Can't block every attack from the sinister vampire, so our tactical barbarian decides to sacrifice his legs and arms, protecting only his vital points. System message flashes, confirming the essence of a corpse golem is being absorbed into his soul, which lets his bones block the vampire's nails. Our durable warrior wonders if someone fed him the essence, already annoyed thinking about how he'll have to change his progress plan. But if he looks at it short-sightedly, things are now very optimistic, as the meat shield that was just taking a beating is now able to move, greatly raising the possibility of survival. Still, he can't just keep taking a beating like this. Suddenly, a glass bottle strikes his armor, and his body quickly recovers as an advanced heal spell takes effect. Our strategist wonders if Arua Raven has finally gotten it together, realizing that if he can continue to recover with this kind of regenerative power, then it's doable. He catches the vampire's hand mid-attack, leaving the creature shocked. Bjorn strikes the vampire, declaring his new stance, Immortal Barbarian Mode. Now it doesn't matter if his flesh and muscles are torn, because his acidic blood will damage the vampire, and any damage he takes will heal in seconds, thanks to the essence and the potions. The vampire gasps, clutching its chest in pain, and when Bjorn gets struck again, Ainar charges in, shouting his name and promising to help. He swings her sword in a wide arc, forcing the vampire to extend its claws in defense, as Bjorn delivers another powerful swing of his weapon. Our bloodied warrior grunts through the pain, his eyes glowing with focus as a streak of magical energy flashes across the floor. The vampire reacts with surprise as it's suddenly grabbed by an unseen force, allowing Bjorn to scream in exertion, leap into the air like a spring-loaded toy, and swing his axe with a powerful war cry. A massive explosion of light and force strikes the vampire, and our strategic fighter shouts, Murad! Hikurad Murad charges up a bolt of magical lightning, unleashing a powerful explosion of energy forward. The vampire Count Cambormir is engulfed by crackling blue magical energy, as Bjorn leaps toward a statue like a gymnast, announcing his next move. Our game master crouches before the statue, holding the vial of goddess tears he'd been saving for this moment, and inserts it into the decapitated statue's neck. Bjorn delivers a powerful punch directly into the vampire's head, triggering a bright flash of magical light. A massive explosion of light erupts, centered on the vampire, as Arua Raven unleashes her 6th rank attack magic, Sunspot Sphere. The vampire reels, pained and bloodied as Arua panics, coughing during the blast. A high-angle view shows the massive fire attack sweeping across the labyrinth floor, engulfing Bjorn, who is still grappled by the vampire. Our self-sacrificing hero curses, regretting that he should have gotten away when he could have. The magical fire consumes the environment, reinforcing Bjorn's regret, until the massive explosion engulfs them both. Our battered barbarian wakes up on the ground, gasping for air and wondering if they actually did it, but the silence makes him question if that vampire bastard is truly dead. Pulling himself up from the ground with immense effort, his eyes widen in realization as the vampire stands tall, seemingly unharmed. Our strategist curses, demanding to know why the creature is still alive, as its immortal skill activates, exponentially increasing its regenerative power in proportion to lost HP. The vampire's chest cavity pulses with red energy, revealing another skill, Source of Darkness, which resists death as long as the heart is okay. Its mangled body begins stitching itself back together magically, and Bjorn gasps, realizing that with this kind of regenerative power, the vampire will be completely healed soon. With everyone else passed out on the floor, our determined warrior realizes there's only one thing left for him to do. He steps forward onto the stone floor, delivering a powerful strike to the vampire. Bjorn hunches over the unconscious monster, breathing heavily as he prepares to deliver a final crushing blow. Our exhausted barbarian brings his fists down onto the vampire, screaming, "Piece of shit!" The monster's body erupts in a violent, bloody explosion, leaving Bjorn standing amid the mist, clutching his own bleeding hands, realizing that to make it out alive, he has to keep unleashing flesh explosion repeatedly, even as he instinctively feels he's reaching his limit, with his HP dropping under 1%. Spectral Reaper-like entity looms over him, as a system message warns his HP has reached 0%, starting a countdown. Our unyielding hero refuses to stop, consuming mentality points, knowing he'd end up dying anyway if he did. He collapses on the ground, gasping for air, realizing he doesn't even have hands left, and decides to use his body instead. A bright magical explosion erupts in the labyrinth, and a black, shadowed rift substance coils around our barbarian's tattooed back. A recovering hero gasps as he jolts awake, and Ainar leans over him, asking if he's finally up. Bjorn is still confused and asks about the rest of the party, but his eyes widen in disbelief when Ainar reveals he's been out cold for 3 whole days. A transmigrated grinder starts flexing his hands, checking for injuries on his powerful, tattooed body, which thankfully seems to be completely fine, until he has a sudden realization. He asks Ainar flat out where his pants are, and she casually explains that they were bothering her, so she just ripped them up. She gives him a big thumbs up, full of praise for the great warrior he is, as Bjorn begs her to stop talking. Ainar then starts talking about the numbers, and Bjorn realizes he must have absorbed the vampire duke's essence, meaning the guardian must have dropped all 3 items, which instantly makes him think about the loot distribution. He recalls the mage being stubborn about her share, claiming she needed it to make up for her losses, and that she specifically argued for the rupture stones, knowing Bjorn took the best loot possible. This makes him think she's the only one who knows he absorbed the vampire's essence, which is why she also gave him the corpse golem's essence and all her potions, basically losing out on everything in the rupture. So the mage isn't mad about the loot at all, but Ainar is still furious that she just left without even waiting for Bjorn to wake up. Ainar then flashes a bright smile, thanking our tattooed tribal chief for being so dependable, and he suddenly focuses, thinking that even if the mage took everything, something else must still be there. He clenches his fist in determination. Moments later, our barbarian with a gamer's brain and his teammate are back in Rafdonia, discussing how good their profits should be after all that hard work. Clerk tells them they've earned 231,520 stone, and Bjorn, holding his bag, thinks it's a pretty good amount, until he's surprised by a sudden question from the clerk. She asks him flat out why a 9th-rank explorer has earned so much, and Bjorn realizes they've never asked this kind of question before. Suddenly, armored guards surround him, pointing their spears, and he can only shout, "What the FK?" Meanwhile, elsewhere in Rafdonia, a fairy explorer looks absolutely exhausted, having just faced 7th-rank monsters for the first time. She recounts the strength of those monsters, and even mentions a 6th-rank monster her sister fought, feeling like it was a proper adventure now that she wasn't just trying to survive. She looks for Bjorn, hoping to surprise him with her tales, but then accidentally yelps in pain when he bumps into her shoulder. Even though it hurts, she can't help but flush, still eager to see him. Later, the fairy explorer Erwin is at a counter, where a clerk writes down her sister's name, Daria Wittember de Tercia. She then leaves with a happy smile, and we see her later bathing in a steaming tub, wondering if Mr. is back yet. She twirls around happily in a dress, sure he'll be home soon. As the sun sets, she enters a room and finds a bearded man standing by the door. Erwin looks shocked and furious, demanding to know why he's taking stuff out of Mr.'s room. But the man only grips his own arms in distress, implying that Bjorn died in there. Later that rainy night, Erwin is inconsolable, hunching over in grief as tears stream down her face. Her sister stands over her, asking if she plans to stay like this, and Erwin, distressed, declares her desire to become stronger. A barbarian with a gamer's brain sits frustrated in a dark jail cell, as an interrogator questions him about a crossbow and barbarian customs. Bjorn fires back, asking if they're really imprisoning him over this, and the interrogator explains that new guild rules now thoroughly investigate 9th-rank explorers to minimize plundering. Sitting handcuffed, Bjorn recalls the incident where he was ambushed by plunderers, and how he had to leave out the part about the woman involved. The interrogator then points to his own neck, asking how Bjorn survived a stab there and where his scar is. Bjorn looks shocked, realizing his scars have healed too because of the vampire's essence, and he curses himself for accidentally talking about the rupture. The interrogator laughs at his slip-up, mocking him for trying to claim a vampire was on the 3rd floor and calling him a bad liar, even as Bjorn asks to call a mage to verify his statements with memory magic, offering to pay. But they refuse him, saying only 7th ranks and up can request that. The jailers try their own mental magic, but our transmigrated grinder's mental barrier is too strong, and an official complains he can't call over a magic tower mage for such a trivial matter, telling Bjorn to just confess. But then the interrogator reveals he has conclusive evidence, a glowing stone. Bjorn recognizes it as a message stone from when he was fighting the Crystal Union, and the interrogator declares it proof he's been plundering others. They found the stone belonged to a dead explorer, received statements from the Crystal Union, and tell our tattooed tribal chief he will be executed in 3 hours. Bjorn realizes talking is useless, and decides there's only one way out of here alive. He grips a metallic bar, and fiery energy erupts from his hand. Bjorn unleashes an explosive blast, overpowering a guard who cowers in terror. The guard is utterly shocked by his power, and Bjorn delivers a final powerful strike. Standing over the incapacitated guard, Bjorn glows with residual energy as magical energy surges around him. Another guard reacts in terror, dropping the keyring, and other prisoners shout in excitement, wondering if he's really escaping. A barbarian with a gamer's brain thinks about how some of them are probably criminals, but an innocent barbarian falsely blamed doesn't care about that as he unlocks the cells. The prisoners cheer and celebrate their release. Chaos erupts in the Explorer Guild lobby as a guard reacts in surprise to the sudden noise. Prisoners cheer their release and start grappling with guards. A woman shouts for explorers to help take down the escapees as a full-blown riot takes hold. Bjorn runs through the chaos, knowing the prisoners will be caught soon since they don't have weapons, but he has a much bigger plan. He vaults over a railing, declaring his goal isn't just to escape, as guards try to stop him from reaching the branch manager upstairs. Bjorn screams flesh explosion, triggering an explosive ability that shocks the guards, who scream in agony as they're hit by the acidic, burning sacrificial seal, searing their skin like a branding iron. The magical seal glows and Bjorn grins intensely, his doping complete. He lunges forward, attacking a guard with incredible speed, delivering a powerful downward strike. Close-up shows the guard's face being brutally smashed into the ground, as Bjorn delivers another powerful blow with his tattooed arm, creating a magical shockwave. He battles on with intense focus. A bloodied guard reacts in shock, asking how this is possible without a potion, as Bjorn stands over his fallen foe. He gloats about how awesome this doping effect is, while other guards hesitate, terrified, and our transmigrated grinder smiles, knowing they never imagined he could be this strong. Our tattooed tribal chief, Bjorn, arrives at the Explorer Guild branch manager's office, kicking open the double doors only to realize he stumbled right into an ambush. He shouts about the ambush, as an assailant immediately charges him like a bull from a gate, grinning as they lunge for the kill. But Bjorn stands his ground. The attacker's shock, our transmigrated grinder is completely unharmed and unimpressed, casually revealing, "Sorry, but my blood is acidic." He watches with a cold expression as his acidic blood takes its toll, and the branch manager watches in horror as Bjorn easily defeats the attacker in her office. The bloodied assailant, barely conscious, manages to warn him that she's the district manager's daughter. Bjorn perks up, asking, "The district manager has a daughter? Looks like I hit the jackpot." The attacker reacts in shock and pain as Bjorn's new plan solidifies, who then declares his change of plans. The distressed woman tries to protest, but our barbarian with a gamer's brain clarifies that having the district manager's daughter here changes everything, and things are either going to get really easy or really complicated, as he grabs her by the throat to silence her. Holding the manager's daughter, Bjorn addresses the guards, warning them that the woman will die. Moments later, he stands on a balcony, holding the screaming woman as onlookers gather below, taking a moment to compose himself before he begins his next move. A transmigrated grinder inhales deeply through his nose, then bellows a powerful cry to the city below, declaring to the shocked crowd of explorers, "Time for retaliation." The explorers below are confused, wondering if it's an escaped prisoner and how he got up there. Bjorn looks out over the city and screams his innocence for all to hear. "I am innocent." He internally confirms that they won't be able to just cover it up if he makes a big scene like this. Meanwhile, at the massive magic tower, word reaches the mages that the Explorer Guild wants one of them. An older, bearded mage discusses the situation with his younger, blonde colleague, who looks surprised by the audacious request. They can't believe Bjorn would take a daughter hostage just to ask for a mage, concluding that he must be stupid and insane. Suddenly, our pink-hatted wizard, Arua Raven, snaps her fingers, realizing there's someone specific she needs to look for. She soon finds our barbarian with a gamer's brain, still holding the district manager's daughter. Arua is utterly shocked, wondering if this Bjorn Jandal is the mage they sent. She gestures angrily, demanding to know why it's him again and why he knows so much. Arua Raven glares intensely at our tattooed tribal chief as their conversation grows more heated. She then leaps back like a spring uncoiling, reminding him of his promise before casting a spell. A hand touches Bjorn's forehead, casting a glowing psychological spell. Arua looks surprised, exclaiming, "It's not working. Do you have some kind of equipment against psychological spells?" A man in a white coat kneels to check on a distressed Bjorn, asking if he's okay, reaching out to touch our transmigrated grinder's shoulder. The man looks on with genuine worry, but Bjorn turns his head, revealing his heavily tattooed back, which shocks the man into a gasp. The man shouts, claiming he already knows about the tattoos. Bjorn lets out a sigh of relief, slumping on the couch. He then looks out with a sharp, suspicious, and aggressive expression. An older investigator with glasses shouts, accusing Bjorn of having way too many magic crystals for a 9th-rank explorer, with a bag full of glowing red crystals sitting on the ground as evidence. The investigator also mentions a crossbow and rusted equipment, indicating stolen loot. He continues, claiming they tracked down the owner of a message stone in Bjorn's bag, and obtained information from the Crystal Union that Bjorn had murdered innocent people and looted the victims. But our barbarian with a gamer's brain questions why testimony from a fellow Union member hasn't been magically proven. The angry investigator points aggressively, yelling that it's because Bjorn kept lying. He demands to know about the vampire's essence, shouting for his subordinates to work on him. The investigator makes a threatening gesture, declaring this is the barbarian's end. However, our pink-hatted wizard, Arua Raven, interjects with a stern expression, stating, "It's true that he ate a vampire's essence in the first-floor rupture." The investigator looks utterly shocked and distressed. Arua addresses the group again, challenging them by pointing out they can't use magic on her. Bjorn stands calmly behind the seated woman as Arua faces down the men, leaving the investigator dumbfounded. Arua stares forward with an intense expression, asserting her authority. She questions the investigator with aggression, asking what he meant and if his little power trip has caused him to start looking down on mages too. The man immediately kneels on the floor in apology, as Arua, Bjorn, and the woman watch him. Mages of the Magic Tower have a status similar to aristocrats, an unspoken rule that everyone understands. Someone questions why the fairy mage doesn't stop, but she holds her ground. The investigator sits on the couch, looking frustrated and annoyed, while the fairy mage looks forward with a stern and cold expression. She points at the man, reminding him that there are still mysteries they don't know the answers to, even now. The man's face is shown in close-up, sweating and looking tense. The mage continues, standing before a monstrous shadow, declaring that they can never predict what might happen in the labyrinth. She questions how he can be sure something can't happen, effectively dismantling his entire case. She gestures toward him, simply asking if he's sure. An observer thinks to himself that the mage is ruthless even to the branch manager, truly a mage through and through. A robed person kneels before our pink-hatted wizard and our barbarian with a gamer's brain. A man in a formal suit announces his name, Nile Urbans. The man looks at them intensely. Our tattooed tribal chief looks surprised, while the hostage girl screams for her father, making Bjorn realize who this man is. Nile Urbans explains that the guild's management system is simple. Hundreds of branch managers, 13 district managers above them, and then the guildmaster at the very top, making the district managers basically second in command. The lying investigator falls to his knees, as if struck, distressed, and muttering to himself. Nile Urbans, the district manager, tells the kneeling investigator that he heard he was looking for him. The man with glasses shouts in distress, realizing who that person is. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain stands over the kneeling man, looking down at him intently, and accuses him of putting out a false witness statement about the message stone. Arua Raven's hand glows with magical energy as she casts a spell, surprising the wizard, who realizes how complicated this man is. Everyone realizes that now that a magic tower mage has proved it, he won't be able to get out of this. The distressed man stutters a denial, as someone asks our tattooed tribal chief if his name is Bjorn Yandel. Our transmigrated grinder stands behind the district manager's daughter, gesturing with his arm raised as the district manager speaks. The distressed man looks down, ready to face the consequences. Nile Urbans decides the Crystal Union has been trouble for a while, and he will handle it. He then announces that the inspector in charge will be fired. Another man with a mustache looks intensely to the side, declaring that a thorough reinvestigation will be conducted into every case the inspector handled. The glasses of the inspector reflect his distress. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain looks down at his hand, thinking about what comes next. He then looks sharply to the left. Bjorn shouts aggressively at the nervous-looking man with a mustache. He yells aggressively at the man, who attempts to calm him down. Arua Raven stares at Bjorn, who looks back at her as he adjusts his stance. Someone asks if this is the famous Raven. Our pink-hatted wizard points her finger, speaking sternly to someone off-panel. The man with a mustache looks tense and annoyed. A grin spreads across someone's mouth. Our tattooed tribal chief is surrounded by floating gold coins, looking excited as he accepts the terms. The man with the mustache looks shocked. Arua Raven clarifies that her 1,000,000 stones for her work here is separate, which makes someone wonder if Bjorn only accepted because she was present. The man with the mustache looks down, sweating and stressed, acknowledging the power that the magic tower wields. The massive magic tower looms under a cloudy sky, a symbol of immense power. Low-angle view emphasizes the towering magic tower reaching into the dark sky. We cut to Arua Raven's personal lab at Altemian School, cluttered with specimens and magical equipment. Our transmigrated grinder, Bjorn, questions why it's so messy here. Arua Raven's hand presents him with a flask filled with blue liquid, which he questions. He takes the blue flask to his mouth, asking if it is water, to which Arua cheerfully replies that they do not have any, with a mischievous smile. A barbarian with a gamer's brain looks closely at the blue flask, his expression one of disgust and suspicion, assuming that weird liquids and monster organs were in this thing until now. Bjorn sits on a chair, questioning the pink-hatted wizard about why she brought him here. Arua Raven explains that she only agreed back then because she was in a hurry, but nothing bad will come out of being friends with a mage. Bjorn gives her a serious look. Arua suddenly looks alert, proclaiming, "Consumed!" Bjorn observes that her eyes have changed, now full of a passion for knowledge. He thinks about how the corpse golem she wanted to study was rare enough. Arua is so excited that our barbarian with a gamer's brain wonders if mages in this world are like graduate students. Bjorn looks intense, then asks if her earlier statements when signing the agreement papers were because of this. Arua confirms her condition, saying that if Bjorn promises not to record that Jandal took the vampire's essence, then she will agree, which makes Bjorn realize he was grateful that she was being so considerate before her true intentions become clear. Arua clears her throat. He then reveals that she also wants research results and asks about Jandal, the corpse golem, questioning if he survived. Arua gestures, confirming that he did, but states that's a separate issue. Bjorn rests his hand on his knee, thinking that in order for this relationship to work out long-term, he needs to show her what kind of person he is. Arua looks shocked as Bjorn reaches out, his tattooed arm moving as he makes his point. Someone who doesn't stand up for himself is just an idiot. He looms over Erwin, the district manager's daughter, who looks up in shock, questioning him. Bjorn stares down intensely at her, accusing, "You fed me the corpse golem's essence without my consent, didn't you?" Erwin pushes her hand against Bjorn's chest to create distance, telling him to back off. Erwin points an accusing finger at Bjorn. Barbarian with a gamer's brain looks down, his face stern, and demands, "So pay me 10 million STONES. I heard that's how much you need to erase an essence at the TEMPL, but Erwin cuts him off, yelling, "Why would you get rid of such a precious thing?" Erwin shows a furious, shocked expression, calling him a psychotic barbarian. Bjorn stands tall and imposing while Erwin stands close to him, both in a tense conversation. Bjorn insists that she ask around. Bjorn stands with crossed arms while Erwin walks toward a crystal ball, shouting that he thinks she does not know any explorers and that he should just wait. Erwin touches the glowing crystal ball to initiate a magical connection. Arua Raven speaks through the magical connection, introducing herself to Mr. Patzrin and asking if he met with her mentor last time. Arua looks concerned while maintaining the magical connection. Arua Raven stares, completely startled, as our calculating chieftain discusses rare essences, asking him if he'd really be mad about a super rare one, but he clarifies that an essence he hadn't planned to take would only harm him. He sits back confidently, knowing exactly what he needs, and Arua blushes, flustered by his bluntness. She's utterly shocked when she calculates the cost of erasing essences, gasping at the 15 million price tag, as our barbarian with a gamer's brain agrees that it takes a lot of money to do anything, wondering if they worship money, not gods. Arua then asks what he would do if money wasn't an option, and he smugly tells her to use her imagination, knowing a skilled explorer like Patzrin would definitely understand the importance of balancing essences, because if she had asked a low-ranking explorer barely making a living, they would have just said to take whatever essence, which is why they lose, so he demands she admit her mistake. Arua realizes he's much more special than she'd heard, and then a white-bearded, blue-robed man appears next to a crying girl, asking who Raven's mentor is. Bjorn realizes this must be Master Havilion, head of the Altemian school, a man powerful enough to occupy 5 floors of the magic tower, maybe even more powerful than a district manager. And the master, amused, says he had fun listening to their conversation. A pragmatic protagonist remains pensive, noting how the master seems surprised by a living barbarian. The master then jokes that most barbarians only come here dead, or with just their hearts left, and Bjorn just stares, stoic. The old man chuckles at his own mage humor, but when Bjorn looks puzzled, he says to loosen up, it was just a joke. Bjorn responds that he happens to be a barbarian who knows how to read the room, then suddenly leans in aggressively, telling the master, "Open that skull of yours." He laughs intensely, insulting the master, and asks if anything is okay as long as he claims it's a joke. The master is utterly shocked by the insult, but Bjorn just keeps laughing. Bjorn stands over the trembling master, who then bursts out laughing, calling Bjorn a real one. The master then looks intensely angry for a moment, but Bjorn just gives a thumbs up and laughs, saying he's a barbarian and they took the joke well, so he'll take back his previous insult. The master then tells him to come to his side anyway, and presents a small red jewelry box containing a glowing ring. A pragmatic protagonist immediately recognizes it as a numbered item, something only obtainable from Guardians of Ruptures, rare and with exclusive abilities, and asks if this is for him. He then looks thoughtful, realizing that even the master of the Altemian school doesn't know about the true ability of this frost spirit ring. As he walks down the stairs, someone calls out, reminding him he promised to help with the corpse golem essence research, and he mutters that he'll do it, knowing she'll remember. The master smiles at Arua, who is apologizing, as our barbarian with a gamer's brain walks into a massive golden gateway. He thinks about how mages are the smartest in this world, yet Arua didn't know how to obtain the goddess tears, and that's when he was certain that even if they're mages, they're basically noobs to him. Back at the inn, a man is shocked to see Bjorn, thinking he had died, and Bjorn confronts the innkeeper who had emptied his room, thinking he was dead. When Bjorn asks about his stuff, the innkeeper apologetically admits he threw it all out, even though Bjorn had paid for an extra week, and the innkeeper begs forgiveness, promising to pay him back. Our calculating chieftain grimaces, thinking he can't even beat this dude up, but then stops, reflecting on his recent violent thoughts. He wonders when he started having such thoughts so naturally, seeing a head go flying and feeling fine. He recalls murdering for the first time, finding it easy, and only hesitating a bit when escaping the jail cell. The argument with the old man in the magic tower was something the 29-year-old office worker Lee Hansu would have never done, and he realizes his personality has changed to become more violent and simple, wondering if he's becoming more like a barbarian. Deciding this change is better for his survival, he tells the innkeeper he'll let it go if he gets 30,000 stones. When the innkeeper starts to protest, Bjorn slams his hand on the counter, questioning the innkeeper's claim of having sold his items, since he had just said he threw them out. Later, our former office worker enjoys his new, much better hotel room, even though it's twice as expensive, because it has windows and a personal tub. He notes the city square is much closer, and the next day at the Angry Bull Inn, Ainar shouts Bjorn's name in alarm. He grabs and pulls him, explaining he's known as the Barbarian of Freedom. Our newly famous explorer looks startled, admitting he had no idea, while another barbarian explains that it's strangely the only thing people don't know about him. Bjorn thinks the guild must have kept him anonymous, at least, as multiple barbarians cheer excitedly, proud that someone like him is one of them. They celebrate his escape from jail to freedom, hailing him as the best barbarian and warrior, and our newly famous explorer walks through the crowd, concerned it's become such big news and hoping nothing bad comes of it. They arrive in Camelby, a large domed city, which Ainar excitedly points out she's never been to. Bjorn then hands Ainar her share of their earnings, telling her it's 300,000 stones. Ainar then spots people eating clouds on a stick and points them out to Bjorn, delighted. She tastes the cotton candy with curious delight, then sits at a cafe table, marveling at how humans are geniuses to think of making something like this. Our newly famous explorer is surprised by her intense focus and delight. But then Ainar looks distressed as three infatuated men offer her love and eternal provision. Overwhelmed, Ainar stares at Bjorn, wondering if she's become ugly because of the attention, and our barbarian with a gamer's brain looks confused. Teary-eyed, Ainar shouts at Bjorn that she's made up her mind and cannot go into the labyrinth with him anymore, leaving our pragmatic protagonist utterly baffled by her declaration. Ainar, resolute and focused, has chosen to train intensely with a tribal elder, meaning she can't join our essence eater in the labyrinth for the next 6 months. But she makes it clear that this is a huge opportunity, promising to return as a warrior strong enough not to be a burden. Back at the tavern, our muscular strategist can only drink heavily, admitting he couldn't hold her back, especially remembering how Ainar was forced to surrender in a previous adventure, and watch helplessly during the rupture, which must have been the final straw for her to make this decision. Now our game-savvy barbarian has to find a new party member, or go solo. Our essence eater knows his basic stats have increased exponentially, making him nearly unrivaled on the second floor. But the third floor and beyond will be too hard to clear alone. Dungeon and Stone is a game that forces you to move in parties, because the higher the floor, the more critical it is to have various roles, which means finding similarly leveled party members for the higher floors is essential. He approaches Erwin, thinking that if he can get her to join with Raven, a 6th-rank mage, he'll get closer to his goal, that is, if he can make it out of here alive. But she immediately shuts him down, aggressively asking, what kind of mage would enter a party with just 2, now 1, stupid barbarians? Our muscular strategist probably should have expected her to say no. Shifting gears, our game-savvy barbarian shows Erwin a document, though the exact stats don't really matter to him, since he already knows they're pretty good. The vampire's essence comes with passive skills like Source of Darkness and Sacrificial Seal, and active ones like Owner of Blood, which lets him temporarily absorb an opponent's skill by sucking their blood, plus Immortal, which increases regenerative power exponentially with HP loss. Now that he has the Immortal Seal as well as the Guardian's essence, our bearded chief feels basically set on regeneration skills. Suddenly, Arua Raven approaches, asking our muscular strategist to wait. She wants to know what he shoved in that vampire's mouth, making him realize she means the goddess Tears, but he knows he can't tell her the truth. Instead, he abruptly shouts that he's hungry and sprints away like a barbarian on the run, leaving a shocked Arua behind. Determined, Arua vows to find answers, diving into the library and finding complete understanding of the rupture III, an ancient text she was lucky to come across in her youth, filled with precious information. She examines illustrations of ruined structures and a suspicious stain on a drawing of a helmet, feeling like the answer is in this book. Soon, she discovers the goddess Tears are a consumable relic of unknown source, one that spreads a very strong blessing when broken, last seen 150 years ago during the dimensional break, when Cardinal Andron used all 3 to save the Pope. Now Arua wonders how a barbarian who just reached adulthood could possibly know the hidden location of such a powerful relic, and how he was able to use it, making her suspect Bjorn Jandal's true identity. Meanwhile, our essence eater contemplates the Golden Mask, an item obtainable by defeating the blood-tinted castle boss under several conditions. It has 5 uses total. Back when he was just playing the game, he wasn't interested in customizing his character, so he simply sold it for 500,000 stones. But now that this is reality, and remembering his past imprisonment for something he didn't do, he decides to keep it for now, just in case he ever needs to turn his back on the city. At a nearby tavern, the chatter among explorers is about the Crystal Union, an explorer clan that grew explosively and initially provided many conveniences for first-floor explorers, even helping ordinary citizens with their taxes. But as they got bigger, they changed, discriminating against outsiders and habitually committing crimes against beginners. Some explorers hated how they posed as heroes, while others remembered their better days. One man whispers about his sister, saying that if it weren't for a certain barbarian, unspeakable things would have happened. He'd been thinking of doing something about them himself, but now won't need to, as the Crystal Union was broken up. Others wonder why and how they were broken up, since they were so powerful. Overhearing the tavern chatter, Erwin finds it hard to believe a mere ninth-rank explorer, who barely just started, could have taken down such a powerful organization. She dismisses it, thinking it too big of a coincidence, but then hears someone question if that barbarian is really dead. She reconsiders, thinking that if the barbarian of freedom really is Bjorn, that would explain why he didn't come back for a week. As she opens the door, her sister's name is called. Erwin wonders if it would be okay to tell her about this. Meanwhile, our muscular strategist heads to the guild, asking the clerk for party members, specifically a team of at least 4 people working on the 3rd floor or higher. He hands over his identity plaque and documents, but the clerk reacts with confusion, then quickly changes the topic when Bjorn asks what that means. Our game-savvy barbarian watches him, suspicious, and then a sudden realization hits him. Just then Hikurod bursts in, laughing heartily, thrilled to confirm it's really him. "It's been a while, Hikurod," greets our tattooed tribal chief. Hikurod asks if Bjorn already has someone, then shares that his party basically already has a mage. A barbarian with a gamer's brain is shocked, wondering who this rare individual could be. Hikurod leans forward, clearly enjoying Bjorn's surprise. Our pragmatic protagonist is busy recruiting for his new labyrinth party, when a strange mage named Litrpg greets him and his dwarf companion, introducing himself with a wide smile. Bjorn, ever the tactician, wonders how likely it is to coincidentally find an 8th-rank mage at this exact time and place, making his suspicions clear to the dwarf. Another explorer, Hikurod Murad, a 6th rank, steps forward to shake hands with the dwarf, while our big-shouldered barbarian stands by with a stern expression, watching the friendly mage. Annoyed by the overly formal introductions, Bjorn cuts straight to the chase, telling them he is Yandel's son, Bjorn, and that they should sit down at the table. He immediately questions why an 8th-rank mage would be out exploring, as it is quite rare. Lear explains that he isn't skilled enough for the middle or upper floors, and the lower floors don't pay enough to make exploration more profitable than working a steady job in the city. The dwarf is shocked to learn that Lear is a noble, but our calculating barbarian just gets more suspicious, thinking the mage sounds like a total fraud. Despite his misgivings, Bjorn accepts Lear into the party, knowing that having a mage will attract better recruits. As expected, they quickly find more people, with Bjorn and Hikurod spending weeks reviewing applications, though our barbarian with a gamer's brain suspects he's doing most of the work. With the team finally assembled, Bjorn proudly shows off his brand-new, glowing Latinium armor and shield, approaching a stoic official at her desk. He even gestures to his back, enthusiastically showing her his new expandable backpack, all made from Latinium. But the light-haired woman is completely unimpressed. He tells him there are complaints, and that he needs to take off his noisy armor, leaving our tattooed tribal chief to mutter that she just doesn't like jokes. As he walks through the streets of Rafdonia, his gaze falls on a fellow barbarian sitting distressed in an alley. The man looks weaponless, making Bjorn wonder why. Our newly armed explorer approaches, startling the barbarian, who flinches in surprise. Bjorn looks sternly at him, and the man confesses that he sold his weapon for money. Bjorn's internal thoughts confirm his immediate suspicion. This bastard is a coward. He introduces himself to the nervous, red-haired barbarian Tarakan, Leon's son. While Tarakan eats, he explains that he went through his coming-of-age ceremony a month before Bjorn, got lost, and couldn't enter the labyrinth. But Bjorn assumes he was just too afraid to fight monsters, and escaping from the excited barbarian crowd would have been easy. The real problem, Bjorn muses, came after that, when Tarakan likely couldn't find work in the city, a major downside of being a barbarian. He presses Tarakan, asking why he didn't just go back into the labyrinth after a month, stunned that he didn't go again. Bjorn is frustrated, wondering if Tarakan even played the game, because he should have known to go in the first time. Everything Tarakan told him after that was exactly what he expected. Our calculating barbarian realizes that if he had run away that day out of fear, he would have met the same fate as this guy. Tarakan, still distressed and sweating, asks Bjorn what he thought of his story. Bjorn flat out refuses to enter the labyrinth with him, but offers to help him in another way. He offers Tarakan silver coins. Our big-hearted barbarian exchanges the money, then gives Tarakan one final, intense warning. No matter if he loses the money, wastes it, gets rich from the labyrinth, or even gets enough to pay Bjorn back, he is never to come find Bjorn again once he leaves. He demands Tarakan answer if he understands. Later, sitting alone in a dark room, Bjorn reflects on his cold actions, admitting they were detestable. He wonders if he was thinking of his past, knowing a logical person would call him stupid, and an emotional person would be mad that was all he did to help, but he believes it was the best he could do. With a silent thought, he tells Tarakan to survive. Soon after, the newly formed party, Team Half Wit, arrives at the labyrinth entrance, and our suspiciously noble mage, Litrpg, excitedly exclaims about the crystal cave, while Hikurod Murad laughs, thrilled to be exploring as a team again. Lastly, our fiery beastwoman, Misha Karlstein, prepares herself. With a wide grin, she enthusiastically declares they should go chop off some monster heads. Misha immediately rounds on Hikurod, reminding him not to call her princess, gesturing in frustration. Bjorn looks over his shoulder and simply tells them to get going, as the new team finally begins their journey into the labyrinth. With their guide Rotmuller's help, our barbarian with a gamer's brain and team Half Wit quickly reach the second-floor portal within 10 hours. But Bjorn is instantly annoyed because someone else got there first, costing him the valuable EXP for opening the portal. He silently laments that if he had been with Ainar, he could have used her bug to claim that EXP, then tells his new team to enter. As they pass through, Bjorn feels disappointed about the missed experience points, thinking of the bug he used to exploit with Ainar Fenelin. They arrive at the beast's lair, a smelly, narrow valley on the second floor, and our fiery beastwoman, Miss Shaw Karlstein, immediately complains about the stench. Other teammates recoil in disgust, while one laughs at their reactions. Bjorn praises Rotmuller, telling him he has a smell-type essence, and notes that their sharp-eyed tracker is proving incredibly dependable. As they trudge through the muddy terrain, Bjorn explains that the beast's lair is a natural maze, making a pathfinder's job crucial. Though the monsters here are easy compared to their party's strength, they easily defeat a variety of wolf and feline monsters, racking up EXP and even a wall mole. Thanks to Dwaki's alarm magic, they can set up 4 guard shifts, allowing Bjorn 6 hours of uninterrupted sleep. But then Arua Raven reveals that the alarm magic only detects incoming monsters, not other adventurers. Bjorn tells Arua to get some sleep too, but his serious eyes show he plans to stay vigilant, keeping watch himself. The next day, the team approaches the portal to the 3rd floor, Pilgrim's Passage, discussing how starting points vary on the 2nd floor, but everyone ends up in the same place on the 3rd. They hope their starting point will be somewhere nice. Miss Shaw asks Bjorn if he's been to the 3rd floor, and he confirms he has, looking serious. Miss Shaw and the dwarf bicker about their explorer ranks, with Miss Shaw yelling that the dwarf is more experienced but already 6th rank, while she is still 7th. Bjorn, increasingly annoyed, tells them to quit it. He reflects that he'll stop too, but others notice he sounds even more frustrated than usual as he walks ahead toward a bright light. The team enters Pilgrim's Passage, only to be immediately startled by an attack. They yell for Rotmuller to back off, as a massive monster with blue horns lunges toward them, and Bjorn charges forward with his shield raised. The monster strikes his shield, creating an explosion of force, and Bjorn grunts as he braces against the impact. He reels from the shock, realizing that if not for his new shield, he would have been trampled. Like that dwarf, he thinks, noticing the struggling teammate. His hand grips the shield tightly as the dwarf cries out, identifying the 7th-rank monsters as Antros, known for their weight balance skill. This skill gives them knockback resistance, which the dwarf's essence was helpful for back in the blood-tinted castle. Heavy boots stomp the ground, cracking the stone floor. The monster reacts to a curse as the wizard prepares to cast magic. A bearded warrior attacks, and Miss Shaw declares she will finish it off. In a dynamic aerial move, she kicks Bjorn's helmeted head, launching herself off our experienced explorer's defense. She raises her short sword high, striking the massive Antro monster as Bjorn blocks with his shield, her face fierce with excited determination. Miss Shaw lands a powerful blow, causing an energy splash, and then lands gracefully on the ground. The Antro screams, a sharp cry like tearing paper as it's hit with bright light, which engulfs it like a sudden inferno. Bjorn, standing in the cavern, questions why Antros, which aren't supposed to appear here, were present, then pauses in surprise. Rotmuller activates his body warmth search skill, and Bjorn calculates that whoever is out there must be within 2 minutes distance. He realizes someone must have been out for them. Luring monsters to the portal is a common tactic used by plunderers, who strike when parties are most vulnerable. Miss Shaw, our fiery beastwoman, immediately wants to beat them up and take their money. But Arua, our panicked wizard looking shaky, suggests writing a warning for the plunderers and leaving. She wants to avoid things going wrong. Miss Shaw praises Rotmuller for his skill, admitting she had only heard of such methods, not experienced them, and another teammate is shocked that meeting plunderers isn't common. Miss Shaw asks Bjorn how many times he's met them, and our observant protagonist, looking frustrated in his helmet, exclaims that he's met them way too many times. Miss Shaw asks him how much bad karma he has, leading Bjorn to an existential crisis about his whole life, wondering if he can't be the only one. Another teammate notes that 5 times in 3 months is still a lot, and they decide to camp there for the night before moving on. One of them asks Dwaki if he's okay, noticing he hasn't looked good. Dwaki, looking distressed, confesses that his fantasy about exploration has been completely destroyed. He feels like his teammates think he's naive, talking about explorers who kill other explorers. The reality of plunderers, and Miss Shaw's casual comment about getting money for killing them, is definitely far from a fantasy. Miss Shaw looks at Bjorn for confirmation. Dwaki, full of confusion and fear, admits he's unsure if he can truly commit when the time comes, his face reflecting his distress, the campfire light glinting on his glasses. Bjorn silently notes that Dwaki's determination is without self-confidence. He reflects that Dwaki is better than those who lie, and then cry in danger, but still. Bjorn exhales, looking calm and composed. He stands with arms crossed, a slight smile on his face, telling his teammate there's something he wants to show him. After their rough entry, Team Half Wit continues through Pilgrim's Passage until they look up and see something truly stunning. It's a breathtaking starry sky that can only be seen on this floor at this specific time. And for a moment, the whole team is mesmerized by the glowing landscape and a distant tower, completely forgetting their earlier fears. A barbarian with a gamer's brain uses this moment to try and inspire some courage in the team, especially for Dwaki, who stands alone, reflecting on the surprising beauty of the labyrinth. As the ethereal light fades, the team sets up camp for the night, with everyone quickly falling asleep, except for our transmigrated grinder, who is on night watch duty. He takes the quiet time to calculate his progress, realizing he has earned a little over 50 EXP. Since he needs 150 EXP to hit level 4, there's still a long way to go. But with 2 essences already absorbed at his current level 3, our tattooed tribal chief isn't in a rush to level up, preferring to wait for a truly good essence. The next day, after a brief travel through the labyrinth, the team reaches the entrance to a new area, the Orc Habitat, a region known for having the highest number of monsters out of all the regions on the 3rd floor, and where only monsters ranked 8th or above appear. While it's ranked 2nd in overall difficulty, Bjorn knows this is the best hunting spot if they aren't going straight to the 4th floor. Suddenly, a scout shouts a warning about orcs approaching from their 1 o'clock, and the monstrous orcs roar and charge, glaring forward with menacing red eyes. The team quickly gets into formation, with a magical ice spear crackling in midair as Dwaki and Rotmiller focus on ranged attacks. With Hikurod and Bjorn acting as tanks, our barbarian with a gamer's brain takes the front line, raising his shield against an incoming strike, while also standing ready with his crossbow. Our cat-eared companion, Misha, lunges in with her blade, looking for an opening as Bjorn maintains a tense, focused expression. Just as the fight is getting intense, an orc witch doctor raises its staff, casting a glowing red aura that envelops a massive orc warrior, increasing its physical attack tolerance threefold for 10 seconds. Bjorn grits his teeth as he blocks a powerful strike from the now buffed monster, watching it loom over the battlefield with enraged red eyes. Bjorn yells a warning to Dwaki about an attack from behind, but the large orc delivers an explosive blow that catches some of the party, making Ainar react with intense alarm. Just as things look dire, Misha, eyes glowing red, lunges forward with a blur of combat action, kicking down the massive orc and announcing, 10 seconds are up, nya. The orc witch doctor screams enraged, but its efforts are too late. After the battle, the team catches their breath, relieved, with Ainar exclaiming she can't believe she killed an orc. Bjorn, our transmigrated grinder, looks thoughtfully at his team, deciding he quite likes this group. They push deeper into the orc habitat, fighting more orcs along the way, with a wizard standing amidst magical ice shards while combating orcs. As they get closer to the center, the number of orcs in each group increases, but the team is able to defeat them easily. Suddenly, an explosion rocks the area, and the team stares in shock as an elderly figure blocks their path on the stairs. This is a Jarwi clan member, who announces this orc habitat is their territory, telling Bjorn and his team to go elsewhere, while another Jarwi member with long gray hair looks sternly at the party. Bjorn, our tattooed tribal chief, is surprised to hear the Jarwi clan is restricting an area on the 3rd floor, since he's never heard of this place being claimed territory. But the Jarwi member just stares with a smirk, finding his confusion amusing. As Bjorn, acting pushy, questions their claim, he feels Misha grab him from behind, realizing she is hiding from something or someone, looking utterly terrified. A Jarwi clan member, Brother Talon, recognizes her, asking flat out, "Is that you, halfling?" Our cat-eared companion, looking fearful, addresses him as Brother Talon, confirming a connection. Her small, distressed face a picture of panic. Another Jarwi member then dismisses her as merely a halfling, mocking her signature nya sound, asking if she's Talon's sister, as Talon stares with a serious expression and pointed teeth. The elderly Jarwi leader, holding his staff, explains they are here for a great orc warrior's essence due to urgent clan matters. Our transmigrated grinder internally questions this, wondering why a 6th-floor clan is doing all this just to get a great orc warrior's essence when it's not even a rare one. The leader then makes it clear that there won't be any monsters for Bjorn's team to hunt, making it best for them to get going, or the Jarwi will interfere with their hunt. One of Bjorn's armored teammates insists that in the labyrinth, strength is law, and they shouldn't push it further, looking concerned. He understands how the dwarf feels, but warns that they must know when to give up if they don't want to die. Before anyone can react, Bjorn shouts Dwaki's name as the young mage tries to introduce himself to the Jarwi, only to be cut off by the elderly leader who calls him garbage and tells him, "Don't even call yourself a mage." This harsh insult visibly destroys Dwaki, who looks on with shock and distress, and an armored dwarf, looking aggressive, shouts at the furious dwarf, reminding him this is not the time to challenge them. As the elderly leader points and shouts about Dwaki's thick skin, Hikurod Mured charges forward like a thunderbolt, his hammer glowing with intense magical lightning energy, ready to strike. Hikurod Mured, a member of Team Half Wit, charges up a massive lightning attack, preparing to unleash it against a shadowy enemy team, and then he leaps into action, weapon ready, shouting a war cry. Stern-looking bearded man watches the situation unfold, while our tattooed tribal chief, Bjorn, is already mid-action in his barbarian helmet, blocking a powerful impact that sends dust and debris scattering across the ground, standing firm with his shield before an unseen opponent. Miss Shaw looks shocked at the ongoing battle, but Bjorn pushes through, even as he's wounded and exhausted, coughing after the massive hit, barely standing. The mysterious bearded man from earlier stares down at the explorers, noting that Bjorn's actions were critical, stating, "You've got quite the good teammate. You should be eternally grateful to that barbarian." He then looks at a cloaked figure's bloodied hand and adds that almost everyone on their own team nearly died. Bjorn stands with his team, all looking towards their opponent, as the mysterious man turns to the dwarf explorer, who looks down with a saddened, ashamed expression and is sternly told, "Your actions almost got us all killed." The dwarf explorer closes his eyes in shame, accepting the rebuke. Another man steps in, half-heartedly praising Brown Rottmuller's efforts, then decides not to blame him further since nothing truly bad happened, while another points out the absurdity of praising the dwarf even after he almost got them killed, with someone internally muttering that they'd be cussing him out right now. Miss Shaw Karlstein, reacting with shock, tries to deny that things would have been better without her, blurting out, "That's not true." Someone shouts out her title in response to her distress, making Bjorn internally note that it's one way to reassure her. A transmigrated grinder suddenly feels goosebumps, realizing the atmosphere has shifted into a cringy, overly sincere vibe he's always hated since childhood. Miss Shaw then speaks with a thoughtful, melancholic expression, revealing more about her past. She explains her beastman heritage, where people are chosen by spirit beasts, and how, as an adult, she was ostracized because no spirit beast chose her. With her cat ears drooping in distress, Miss Shaw recalls that while she was on good terms with her siblings as a child, everyone started ignoring her when she came of age and still hadn't been chosen, telling her, "Don't touch me, you halfling." She remembers everyone calling her a halfling and an illegitimate child because she was mixed. After her mother passed away, no one knew the truth of her lineage, and unable to deal with the discrimination, young Miss Shaw left home to learn how to fight. She looks at the team, explaining that's how she became an explorer, prompting an unknown teammate to tell her it must have been really hard. The dwarf explorer takes her hand, reassuring her that it's hard to talk about such things and thanking her for sharing. But just as the emotional moment settles, the dwarf explorer bursts out, demanding to know why that's the conclusion they came to and declaring it's his turn to share. Our earnest dwarf explains that his dream was to become a blacksmith, but he lacked the talent, failing to graduate from training for 10 long years. Next, the wizard reacts with shock, now feeling compelled to share his own story, looking down at a tall, ominous tower as he admits he only got into magic because of his family's status, but lacked the talent to get into the magic tower itself. He confesses that if he'd been a proper mage, he's sure the other mages would have respected him at least a little. The mousy wizard then cries, thanking the dwarf for making him feel brave enough to share, as the other party members watch. Bjorn, still standing behind a kneeling person in the darkened room, listens to their confessions. He's shocked that his teammates are also revealing their insecurities, stating that he was very upset when Murad and Miss Karlstein talked about age and experiences. Our barbarian with a gamer's brain confesses it was because of his sickening envy, believing they had no right to complain since they were lucky enough to be born as non-human species. Miss Shaw looks at Bjorn with a surprised expression, asking if there aren't any advantages to being a human explorer, prompting a cat-like affirmation. The dwarf explorer smiles broadly, his enthusiasm unwavering. Miss Shaw, the wizard, and the dwarf turn their backs to us, affirming their resolve to try their best and hope they last long. Then they all stare intently at Bjorn with sparkling, expectant expressions, waiting for his turn. Bjorn looks anxious and stressed, sweating nervously, wondering why they're all staring at him with such expectation, and what he should even say to avoid being left out of the party. His mouth is shown in an extreme close-up as he struggles to speak, proclaiming he's not used to these kinds of groups. Suddenly, Bjorn shouts at the top of his lungs in a panic, "I don't have a mom!" He stutters, continuing to yell aggressively while the dwarf and wizard look on in total shock, his face contorted in a frantic shout with his fist raised high in the air. He screams in frustration, hand pressed to his chest, that he can't meet his family now even if he wanted to. He gestures towards his allies, asking how that sounds and loudly assuring them it's 100% true, claiming Ainar told him. Miss Shaw Karlstein starts crying, realizing Bjorn has also had a hard life from a young age. The dwarf explorer looks incredibly touched and also starts crying, full of sympathy for our barbarian. Bjorn, wanting to cut off the emotional outpouring, shouts that he's okay and tells them to screw off. As Miss Shaw wipes her eyes and the dwarf looks on, someone notes that Bjorn is the youngest on the team and doesn't need to hold back, making Bjorn internally lament becoming the most pitiful guy in the team, before shrugging it off by reminding himself he doesn't really not have a mom. He then stands proudly in his armor against a starry backdrop, internally boasting that he's a munchkin barbarian who became a 7th rank explorer in just 3 months. Our loose-skinned lord thinks about how he had to get dragged into a game realm and risk death multiple times, but then pauses as a thought hits him. Miss Shaw looks shocked, her cat ears alert, sensing his distress. Bjorn looks utterly miserable in his armor, internally cursing his pitiful life. His team looks at him with concern, with Miss Shaw reaching out, offering for him to think of her as his sister if he misses his family. Bjorn, wearing his helmet, looks to the side with an intense expression, Miss Shaw then shifts the conversation, mentioning the swamps and stating it would take 6 days to reach them from their current location. Another explorer confirms the travel time. The bearded dwarf warrior, looking concerned, reiterates their firm stance on exploring the swamps right now. Close-up of our barbarian's helmeted face shows his serious expression, as he internally explains that the witch's forest is an area explorers only go to when absolutely necessary, and it's not a great place for hunting. Bjorn touches his chin, thinking the dwarf is so adamant because the 4th floor is just that dangerous. He explains that while the 4th floor has 7th and 8th rank monsters, just like the 3rd, it also sometimes spawns 6th rank monsters. He describes one such monster's sharp teeth, adding that it's rare enough to take 4 days of searching to find one, but that just means they will find one once they're there, recalling how he's actually died many times on the 4th floor because he wasn't prepared enough. His past self, Hansu Lee, is seen in distress with a game over screen behind him, thinking it would be fine this time, before Bjorn cuts off his internal monologue. Our barbarian opens his mouth, ready to announce his decision. Then in his armor and helmet, he addresses his team about exploring the 4th floor, declaring he thinks they should go.